Story 1. Pregnant wife demanded we name our baby after her ex's choice. I refused, so she ran off to clear her head. Turns out she's been cheating with him for a year. Hey, so my wife, Dina, and I discovered that we were pregnant about a month ago. We have been married for 3 years, we're both 28, and we intend on going through with the pregnancy. Dina and I went to high school together, but didn't get together until much later. We were friends in high school, but she moved away for college, and that's where she met her first husband, Alex. They got married right after they graduated when she was around 22 and stayed together for a year before going their separate ways. I'll come to the reason later. Dina and I drifted apart after high school, but we reconnected when she moved back here right after the divorce. A common friend of ours invited her to a Thanksgiving dinner several years ago, and that's where we met again for the first time after high school. We got to talking that day and I ended up asking her out, but she told me that she had just had a really bad divorce and was not looking to date yet, but she would gladly be friends with me again. I was content with that, and so we exchanged numbers and started talking to each other more often. We became really good friends in the span of a year, and after a while, she was the one who asked me out. I said yes because I liked her and I could see a future with her. After dating for a couple of years, we decided to get married, and now we have been together for almost 4 years and married for 2. When we found out that we were pregnant, she and I were both thrilled. So far, our relationship had been really dreamy and beautiful. We had fights like every other couple does, but we would always make up within hours and there would never be huge fights, just minor and insignificant disagreements. But our first big fight happened when we started discussing baby names. It has just been a month, but Dina has been really excited and started discussing baby names as soon as we found out that she was pregnant. She seemed pretty insistent about the name Philip if it was a boy. It was a nice name and I didn't have a problem with it, mostly because right now we were just spitballing and we could always change our minds later. Unfortunately, we hit a snag as soon as we announced the pregnancy to our friends about 2 weeks ago. We decided to host a dinner for a couple of our friends so we could tell them about the pregnancy. Our families already knew and we had celebrated this whole thing with them, but that was kind of a family-only event and our friends were still in the dark, so we decided to have a separate dinner for them. They were all really happy for us, too. Then Dina started talking about baby names at some point while we were having dinner. When she mentioned that she was thinking about naming the baby Philip if it was a boy, I noticed that her best friend, Wendy, seemed a little shocked, but didn't say anything. I didn't think much of it, but after dinner, she told me that she was going out for a smoke, but she had forgotten her lighter and asked me if I could lend her mine. Dina doesn't like smoking, so she told the both of us to go out into the backyard and do whatever we had to do. Even up until then, everything was going fine, but as soon as she and I were out of earshot, she told me that she had something very important to discuss with me and started speaking in a really quiet voice. At first, I thought she was going to hit on me and was horrified, but instead she said something way worse. Apparently, Philip was the name that Dina had decided on during her first pregnancy when she was still with Alex. Wendy started off by saying that I probably already knew this, but I had no idea about any of it, and everything that she told me was brand new information for me. She told me that Alex and Dina had separated after she lost her baby in her 5th month and Alex started cheating on her because he was grief-stricken. She and Wendy have been friends ever since they were kids, so she knew everything, and she also knew that Dina and Alex wanted to name their baby boy Philip, but unfortunately, after Dina lost the baby, both of them started fighting almost every day and Alex ended up cheating on her with another woman from work. He was the one who confessed to her after a few weeks of his affair and then they got divorced. I had never heard this version of what happened back then until Wendy told me, and this is not something that people discuss anyway, so I couldn't exactly find out the truth from other sources. Dina had told me that she and Alex got divorced because they were fighting a lot since they were just incompatible. They got married young and it was a mistake. That's the version that I heard from her and believed until very recently. It never even occurred to me that she might not be telling me the truth because why would she want to lie to me about something like this? I wouldn't judge her regardless of which version she told me, and also, it wasn't like she came off looking bad in the true story, so I couldn't imagine why she would want to keep that a secret from me. Anyway, Wendy told me that she had a feeling that I didn't know that it was the name that she had picked out with Alex and felt like it was a duty to tell me about it, even though she was Dina's best friend. I thanked her for telling me about the context of the name, but she had no idea that she had told me a lot more than just the story behind the name. I tried my best to keep calm and stay composed for as long as our friends were in the house. But as soon as they left, I confronted Dina about what Wendy had told me. She instantly denied everything and told me that Wendy must have been joking, but I ended up taking it seriously. But I knew what a joke was, and Wendy was most certainly not joking. So I kept insisting that she'd tell me the truth, and she finally confessed that whatever Wendy had told me was true, and she and Alex had separated because he had been cheating on her after she lost her baby. Everybody in her family knew about it, and so did a few of her friends. She hadn't really stayed in touch with any of her friends from here when she was with Alex apart from Wendy. So most people here have no idea about her pregnancy or the loss of her baby. Since she didn't post any of it on social media, she planned on announcing it around her 6th month, but sadly, she never got there. She told me that she had left Alex and all her friends behind and had come back here because staying there was too painful. Wendy had known everything all along, and she had assumed that once we started dating I would get to know her, too. But given the sensitive nature of the topic, it never came up and I never found out the truth until that day. Her family knew, but they had been told not to share it with me because she didn't want me to know about this. She said that it was really personal and it was a very traumatic experience for her, which is why she never wanted to talk about it again. But as much as I wanted to drop the topic and never bring it up again for her sake, I couldn't do that because I still needed answers. I told her that I respected the fact that she was traumatized from what had happened back then, but I still needed to talk about this and get to the bottom of certain things that I still didn't understand. I couldn't figure out why she hadn't told me the truth even after we got married, because I felt like this was something really huge and I should have been kept in the loop about it. And more importantly, she was planning on naming our baby a name that she had picked out with her cheating ex-husband. That seemed kind of weird, and I wanted to talk about why she was so inclined towards that name. Going by her logic, if she had abandoned everything in her past, including Alex and all her friends, because it was too traumatic for her to relive, then shouldn't she have left that name behind in the past as well? It just didn't add up. I was trying to talk to her, but she just kept ignoring me and scrolling through Instagram on her phone. So I got kind of annoyed and told her that she needed to talk to me because she owed me the truth. She snapped at me when I said that and started yelling at me, saying that now that I already knew the truth, she owed me absolutely nothing. She then said that I was being a jealous and insecure narcissist and forcing her to talk about things that she wanted to forget because of how traumatic it was for her. I apologized instantly, but I also mentioned that even if we didn't talk about it right then, we had to get everything out in the open at some point because at that moment I was feeling betrayed and hurt, and it was like she didn't even care about my feelings. But she told me that she never wanted to talk about this again, and then the fight got even worse. We had been fighting for almost half an hour when she finally gave up and said that she couldn't do this anymore and started packing her things. She told me that she was going to go live with her parents for a while until she calmed down and suggested that I think about my own behavior with a cooler head and get back to her when I was ready to act like a grown-up instead of a little boy. I was very tired of fighting with her, so I let her go and I didn't stop her. I also didn't appreciate the fact that she was trying to belittle my feelings and act like it was no big deal that she had been lying to me for years about why she had really divorced Alex. I was very angry, upset, and hurt, so I didn't think it was worth it to get into another fight trying to stop her from leaving. On top of that, this was the first time that we were fighting about something so big that she had actually left, so I had no idea what to do next. I tried to distract myself for the next couple of days by throwing myself into work. I kept waiting for her to call or text, but there was just radio silence from her end, which was even more disappointing. I would have preferred for her to call me even if it was just to yell at me. The silence was much worse than the fighting, and after a while, I just couldn't take it anymore because I wanted answers and I wanted a solution. So about a week and a half ago, I went to her parents' place from work to talk to Dina, but when I got there, they told me that she wasn't with them and said that I had to leave because I had caused a lot of pain to their daughter, and she had been devastated when she showed up at their house. They said that I was selfish for forcing her to talk about things that she wasn't ready to talk about just because I felt bad about it, even though she was the one who had to go through something 10 times worse. They also brought up how I hadn't even tried to contact her in the days after she left and told me that she had been waiting for me to call. But when I didn't call for an entire day, she decided that she was going to go on an impromptu trip to clear her head, and that's where she was. I begged them to tell me where she was, but they told me that they weren't allowed to tell me, and if I wanted to talk to her, then I could call her myself. Then they shut the door on my face and told me to leave them alone because they were not going to help me out with this. It was humiliating to be treated that way, but I was more worried about where Dina was, so I went back home and I decided to call her. She did answer my call, thankfully, but she still refused to tell me where she was. I didn't apologize to her on the phone because I still didn't think I had said anything out of line, but I did tell her that I wanted to talk to her. To that, she responded by saying that she was not ready to have a conversation yet, if that's what I meant, and more importantly, now that she finally had some time to think because she was on her own. She had been reevaluating our relationship and she no longer knew if she even wanted to be with me anymore. She said that she liked the name Philip and it had nothing to do with her previous marriage or pregnancy. I was the only one who was thinking along those lines, along with Wendy, who she claimed was just being stupid and stirring the pot, and it just grossed her out because it made me look really juvenile and insecure. There was also the fact that I hadn't even bothered to reach out to her after the fight, even after I had made her feel horrible. I tried to tell her that I believed that my concerns were valid because she had been lying to me for years, but she disregarded all of it. She told me that she was going to be out of town for a couple of more days and she wanted me to think about everything and decide if I wanted to act normal or continue to have a fit about something so petty. She said that if I could bring myself to accept her past and her unwillingness to discuss it, then we could move forward and get counseling to deal with our emotions, but if I still had a problem with her wanting to name our child Philip, then she would file for divorce because she couldn't be with a man who didn't understand her. She told me that it was my call to make and she would be okay with whatever I decided to do. Then she disconnected the call before I had a chance to say anything else. I was conflicted about what to do, so I couldn't give her an answer. When she came back a few days ago, she called me on the day that she returned and asked me if I had made up my mind, so I told her that I hadn't and that I needed some more time to think about what I wanted to do. She said that she was okay with that, but the longer I took to think about it, the less faith she had in me, and that stung. It's been a few days and I haven't spoken to her because I still don't understand what I should do. This is a really complicated situation. I want a future with her and my child, but she is acting so unreasonably that I don't even know how that's going to be possible. I truly don't think that what she did was okay because she had been lying to me about something so significant, and I don't know if I can just forgive and forget. She has also been invalidating my feelings and making me feel like I'm overreacting, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not. I can't talk to my friends and family about this because it feels too much to share with the people that I actually know. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let our wife name our future kid a name that she picked out with her ex-husband? Update 1. Hi guys. Thank you so much for the verdict and the advice. It was really helpful, so thanks for that because I was absolutely lost on what to do. With a heavy heart, I had to come to the conclusion that if we can't sort things out with each other, then a divorce might be the only way out of this. But that's pretty much my last resort, and I do want to do my best to make things work even though our relationship is very dysfunctional at this stage. So I told Dina that I wanted to make things work, and she said that so did she. But for that I needed to stop thinking about just myself. She said that on the phone and it irritated me, but I didn't let it get to me because I needed her to come back home so we could talk and clear the air. So I ignored that and I told her that we needed to have a conversation in person, and she agreed, and we met last night when she came back home to talk to me. I could tell that she had been in some beachy area because she had a tan, and I was instantly annoyed because while I was losing my mind over here trying to think of a way to make our marriage work, she was out frolicking and having fun on the beach. She was also really curt with me while greeting me and was acting as though we were strangers, so we got off to a rough start. But we still went through with the conversation that needed to be had, and I brought up all the issues that had been bothering me in the last couple of days. I told her everything about how she had been invalidating my feelings and trying to downplay the seriousness of what she had done, and while I respected and understood the fact that it had been a traumatic experience for her, I couldn't just ignore everything that I was feeling because she wasn't comfortable talking about these things. And I reminded her that we wouldn't even have to have this conversation at this stage of our relationship, after we were married and were now even expecting a child together, had she just been honest with me right from the beginning. I thought she was going to argue with me, but she didn't, and said that she could understand where I was coming from and she was sorry about it, which was a welcome change in her attitude towards this situation. But she didn't stop there and went on to tell me that while she was sorry about not being honest with me, she was also very upset with me because I had been horrible to her after the party when I found out the truth, and it was very upsetting to know that I would never stop and think about my family because I was too egoistic. I didn't understand what she was referring to until she said that she had been waiting for me to call after the fight because she was pregnant and it wasn't right for me to just ignore her that way. She was very disappointed that it took me 3 whole days to come around and finally go looking for her. Her parents had told her that even on the day that I visited them, I had waited until I got off work to go look for her and talk to her, and she said that just made her feel like she wasn't important enough to me. I tried to defend myself because I was in a bad place mentally at the time as well and was struggling to process and accept a lot of things. I did apologize for it, but I also said that she could have reached out to me as well. And to that, she said that she shouldn't have had to because she was the one who was pregnant and I should have been more concerned about her. I tried to tell her that I was concerned about her, but I was also a human being and I was feeling bad, and that's why I didn't reach out to her first. So then she brought up how I didn't even try to find out where she was when I got to know that she wasn't staying with her parents and was out on a solo trip. She said that anything could have gone wrong with her and I wouldn't even have got to know until it was too late. I thought it was weird that she was turning all of this around on me, so I told her that I didn't go looking for her or try to find out where she was because I could understand that she wanted some time away from me and all our relationship issues, which is why she left in the first place, and I didn't want to intrude and make her even more mad. I also trusted her in her judgment and was sure that she wouldn't do anything that would put herself or our future child in danger because she was a grown woman and could think for herself. But that wasn't satisfactory enough for her as an explanation, and she told me that I had let her down by not even trying to look for her and protect her while she was in such a vulnerable state, and apparently that's why she said all those things about not wanting to be with me anymore and losing faith in me. I kept trying to explain to her that I was worried about her and I was losing my mind over here, but I didn't want to turn up at a place that she went just to be away from me and make her even more mad. I wasn't willing to take that risk, so that's why I just stayed at home and waited for her to come back. But she wasn't willing to accept that explanation, and we ended up getting into another fight. She said that I didn't care about her enough and that she didn't know if she could do this anymore, so she needed a little more time away from me to sort out how she felt about all of this. She left after that and we haven't spoken since then. I honestly have no idea what's going to happen, and in all probability we might have to get divorced because I personally can't think of any way that this is going to work. It's been frustrating for me because I really wanted to make things work, but it appears to me that she isn't willing to budge from her stance and is bent on making me out to be the bad guy just for expressing my emotions and feeling things. Update 2. So I found out something really terrible a couple of hours ago, and I guess I should have seen this coming. I was talking to Wendy about the situation with Dina because nobody else knew her as well as she did, and I was hoping that she could help me out here somehow. We hadn't spoken ever since the day of the party, and I hadn't told any of my friends or family about the kind of fights that Dina and I had been having. But today I just couldn't stop overthinking about literally everything, and I decided to call Wendy for help, and I'm so glad that I did because I don't think I would have found out about Dina and her affair otherwise. That's right, she has been cheating on me. I don't know for how long and I don't know why, but she's back with Alex now. Wendy told me that she had actually been waiting for me to contact her as soon as she answered my call, and that was kind of confusing because it wasn't as though she and I were close and talked on the phone very often. She didn't even let me get a word in and started telling me that she had been thinking about reaching out to me for several days now, but didn't feel comfortable betraying her best friend and making things worse for Dina since she'd already caused enough trouble by telling me the real reason behind her first divorce and the story of the name Philip. So she waited for me to contact her first. She then sent me a picture that Dina had uploaded on her Instagram story a couple of days ago, and I'm sure that she had hidden it from me by changing the privacy settings because I hadn't been able to see any of her stories ever since our fight. I didn't understand what it was about because it was just a picture of her in a bikini lying on a lounge chair on the beach with her sunglasses on. It was a cool picture, but that was about it, and I didn't notice anything off. But then Wendy pointed out an arm in the corner. Another guy was lying on the next lounge chair and the person had been cropped out, but their arm was still in the picture. It was definitely a guy, and Wendy told me that she didn't think there was anything weird about it either until she noticed that there was a tattoo on the guy's arm near their wrist. On zooming in, she found out that it was a motorcycle tattoo identical to the one that Alex had. It was a very minute detail and nobody would have noticed it, but she told me that she remembered it from when Alex first got it and Dina sent her thousands of photos when they were married. Wendy had even messaged Dina to ask if it was Alex that she was on the beach with, but she didn't say anything and just responded with a motorcycle emoji. Wendy told me that she wasn't exactly sure if it was Alex or just somebody with the same tattoo, and even tried to say that maybe it wasn't even the same tattoo because it was quite pixelated, but I could very clearly make out that that was in the shape of a motorcycle. It wasn't that pixelated, and Wendy was just trying to second-guess herself so I wouldn't feel bad. But as soon as I heard that Dina had responded with a motorcycle emoji, I started feeling sick to my stomach. It was quite typical of Dina to act smug about these things, and I already knew deep down that she had indeed been cheating on me. After my phone call with her, I decided to call my dad immediately and asked him to put me in touch with a divorce lawyer at the earliest because I wanted to be out of this marriage. I texted Dina and I asked her about that picture, but she hasn't replied to me yet, and I really don't need her to respond because I already know the truth. I know that she had definitely been cheating on me, and that's why she was fighting with me so much. There was just no other explanation for how strangely she had been behaving. I feel terrible about it, of course, but this just gives me an excuse to leave and put myself first without feeling guilty, and I needed that because I'm just sick of constantly dealing with her in these fights. I can't do this anymore, and I want nothing more than to be away from her. Update 3. Hi guys. So it's been 2 months since I filed for divorce. There was a lot of drama when I accused Dina of cheating on me with Alex, but eventually she confessed that she had and had been hooking up with him behind my back for almost a year. Alex had reached out to her last year when he was around for a work conference, and she decided to meet him for one last time without telling me because she wanted closure, but they ended up getting together and he even quit his job and moved here permanently so he could be closer to her. She had been trying to build up the nerve to tell me that she was with him, but just couldn't do it. She did apologize to me for it, but that apology meant nothing. So there is a real chance that the baby might not even be mine, and we are waiting for it to be born so we can judge who gets custody. I have made up my mind that if the baby turns out to be mine, then I get full custody, and if it isn't, then they can keep it. I'm seeing a shrink to deal with all my feelings and trying to make sense of my life right now. It's going decently, and I'm just trying to hold myself together. Thanks to everyone who reached out to me here and commented on my post. It's really nice of you guys. Update 4. Hey, so quick update. The baby was born a month ago. He's mine and I get full custody. The divorce also came through a couple of months back, and I got to keep everything that belonged to me. No alimony either, which was a huge bummer for them, but that's what cheaters get. Nothing. I'm doing considerably better than before and finally getting my life back together. It's much easier when you don't have a crazy wife to deal with. Again, thank you so much for checking in on me, folks. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Entitled Mom Asked to Borrow My House for Her Book Club. Found 100 plus teens partying there on CCTV instead. Kicked her out, and now she's calling me selfish and cut contact. I, 24F, recently inherited a house from my late uncle. My uncle was an eccentric man and a wealthy one at that, so he could afford whatever he wanted. This 2-story house with a swimming pool in the front yard was one of those things. He was a bachelor till he passed away at 60 a few months ago, so he really didn't need this big house, but he bought it nevertheless, and it turned out to be a blessing for me. My uncle left all money and property to his favorite family members, and I happened to be one of them, so I inherited $75,000 in this house. A few others split the rest of the money and whatever other assets he had. I moved in here 2 weeks ago and haven't completely finished unpacking yet, but I already love this place. My parents know that I've moved into my uncle's place, and I even invited them to check my new house the day after I moved in. My mother brought her stepdaughter, 16F, along with her, which was a little weird because I'd asked only her to visit, but I didn't mind since it's not like I hated that kid. I didn't particularly like her because her behavior around me was really closed off and curt, even though I'd been nothing but nice to her. My parents are divorced and have been for the last 20 years. They separated when I was 4, and my parents continued to remain on good terms as they co-parented me growing up. They didn't have a messy divorce, and as far as I know, they separated because they realized they were incompatible but stayed good friends. So, I had a good relationship with both my parents growing up. But my mother remarried a couple of years ago, and she's been distant ever since. She'd been dating her now husband for 2 years, and I'd met him several times and we'd been civil. So, I didn't really expect my mother to suddenly distance herself from us after her wedding, but I tried not to feel too bad about it because she had a new family now and would obviously want to devote more of her time to them, now that I was a grown-up and could deal with my life on my own. My dad remained single, and as a result, he's the one I've been spending more time with over the past couple of years. So now I'd say that I'm a lot closer to him than I am to my mother, but this house was an important milestone that I wanted to celebrate with both my parents present. My mother's behavior was really awkward and nothing like the past because she, just like her daughter, was putting on the same curt behavior as if we were all meeting for the first time. She wasn't as relaxed as she used to be, but I couldn't address it without making things even weirder, so I just had to deal with it. In the past couple of years, I'd only been able to meet my mother a handful of times, mostly on the holidays, and she still did seem relaxed and fun to be around, even though we were meeting after a really long time. But this time it just wasn't the same, and I suspected that it must have been because of her stepdaughter's presence. I wasn't sure of it though, so I didn't bring it up later with her either. My dad had only good things to say about the house and said that it was perfect for me, and my mom agreed. I was pleased that they liked it and even said that I'd like to host Christmas at my house this year. My dad was really happy, but my mom and her stepdaughter just pursed their lips and sat there silently. So, I could tell that something really weird was going on with my mom even then, and I should have probably foreseen what was to come. About a week ago, I was asked by my company to attend a meeting a little out of town. The location of the meeting was a 7-hour drive away from the city, and I was skeptical to leave, but my boss was insistent that they wanted nobody else but me to deal with this client. So I agreed eventually, since they offered to let me stay at the hotel. The meeting would be held for the weekend, so I was getting a free vacation out of this short business trip as well. The only reason I've been skeptical to go on this trip was because I had a really important package, a rare collector's edition game, arriving on the day I was supposed to leave, and someone needed to be there at my house to receive it or else it would go back. And I couldn't let that happen since I'd had to wait for ages for it to be delivered already. If it went back, I might have had to wait for a really long time again. My boyfriend and I are going to be celebrating our 3rd anniversary in 2 weeks, and I needed his gift to be ready, so it was very important for me to receive the package on time. My first thought was to ask my dad to be there at my house to take it instead, but unfortunately, he'd be out of town for the weekend as well, and would only return 6 days later since he's taking a trip to the beach with his friends. I couldn't ask my boyfriend because it was his gift, and I wanted it to be a surprise. I'd asked a couple of my friends, but the timing wasn't working out for any of them. I was on the verge of giving up and was going to ask my neighbors to watch out for the delivery, which would be kind of awkward because my neighbors were mostly unfriendly and cold middle-aged corporate professionals who already didn't like me much because I didn't exactly fit into this neighborhood. I was too young is what my dad explained to me when I asked him why they were all weird towards me. With no other options left, it appeared that I would have to go to them for help anyway and have to deal with the awkwardness. I didn't want to ask my mother either because I already knew that she'd say no and make up some excuse, and frankly, after the last meeting that we had, I didn't want to ask her either. It had been weird enough, and I really didn't want to bother her. But surprisingly, she's the one who chose to call me instead. My mother and I used to talk on the phone a lot before she got married again, but after that, she'd pretty much stopped calling me unless she had a reason to. So I waited for her to get to the point, and eventually she asked me if I'd be willing to vacate the house this weekend and let her use it for her book club meeting for just one day. She promised me that she'd even pay for wherever I needed to go that day, but she just wanted the keys for one day since she was supposed to host this weekend, but her husband was going to be home on the day that they were supposed to meet. Coincidentally, it was the day that my boyfriend's gift was supposed to arrive, and I was supposed to go on the trip. So I immediately said yes. It didn't seem very fishy at the time because my mother had been a part of her book club for a really long time, and my house was just a little outside of her neighborhood anyway. I was just thrilled that I could go on this trip without worrying about the package and agreed to let her stay at my house for the weekend, and I wouldn't have to vacate the house as such either because I'd be out anyway, so it worked out well for both of us. 2 days ago, I finally handed over the keys to my mother at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon and started on my journey. The client was a weirdo and had scheduled the meeting at 9 o'clock, so it didn't make sense to leave early. It was a 7-hour drive, and I was fully prepared to unwind on the drive and also utilize the spa at the hotel the next day. But around the 5th hour of my drive, my boss reached out to me to inform me that the client had canceled since he'd had a terrible allergic reaction to something he'd eaten a few hours ago and was currently in the hospital. I was obviously really annoyed, but there was nothing much that I could do at that point. So I decided to stop at a restaurant for some food and to contemplate what to do next. The company wanted me to go back home because obviously they didn't want me to stay at the hotel on their money since the client had rescheduled the meeting for the next weekend. While eating, I decided to check what was going on at my house and test the new CCTV cameras that I'd installed in every room. I could access them from wherever I wanted to, and I had them installed just a few days back, so I wanted to check how well they were working. Now, to my surprise, I saw that instead of just a couple of women in their late 50s sitting and discussing books in the living room, my house was jam-packed with a bunch of kids. Teenagers to be more exact, and not just in the living room, but every damn room was overflowing with teens. I didn't count, but I was sure that my house was overrun with at least 100 kids. I was dumbstruck and had no idea what was happening, so I decided to rush right back to check out what was happening. It was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I found out about the party happening in my house without my consent, and I knew that my mother and her stepdaughter definitely had something to do with this. I drove back home, and by the time I reached, it was almost 11 o'clock. I could hear the music from a block away, and when I finally reached, there were kids drinking beer and chilling in the yard. My stepsister had thrown a full-blown rager in my house without even asking me first, and I was pissed. As soon as I opened the door, it felt like all my senses were being attacked at once. The music was ear-splitting, and it was a miracle that nobody had called the cops yet. The house reeked of cheap beer and sweat, and I was struggling to get through the throng of teenagers all dancing or making out or just standing there vaping. It took me a while and earned me a lot of odd looks from the kids while I made my way from room to room checking for my stepsister, but I finally found her in a secluded bedroom on the second floor. She was sitting on the floor there with a couple of her friends, drinking beer out of a cup and giggling like an idiot. Then I saw that she had her feet propped up on a pillow that she'd definitely taken from my bed, and I absolutely just lost it. She'd seen me standing in the doorway but had just ignored me and gone back to talking to her friends, but I wasn't about to let her ignore me like that, especially when she was in my house. So I grabbed her by the arm and lifted her to her feet and told her that she and her friends needed to clear out right away or else I'd call the cops on them. Thankfully, she wasn't too drunk and could stand on her own, so I didn't need to hold her up for much longer. That little brat had the audacity to argue with me and said that my mother had said she could have the place for the day, so I had no right to interfere or kick her out. Lucky for me, this house didn't belong to my mother, it belonged to me, and I had the paperwork to prove it as well. So I told her that she could either make herself scarce right then or I really would call the cops, and even if I didn't, one of my cranky old neighbors definitely would, thanks to their ear-splitting music. After some arguing, a few of her friends seemed to be intimidated by the idea of having the cops pay them a visit because after all, they'd all been drinking heavily and most, if not all of them, were underage, so they could get into serious trouble for it. Within half an hour, they cleared out, and once they were all gone, I decided to contact the person responsible for all of this. I called my mother up and gave her an earful for taking undue advantage of my trust. I told her that I just had to kick out a bunch of teenagers from my house because her stepdaughter had decided that it was okay to throw a massive high school rager in my house in my absence without even asking me first, all thanks to her. I told her that it was unacceptable what she'd done and that she was lucky nobody called the cops. But instead of apologizing to me, she started arguing with me and told me that I'd overreacted and ruined my stepsister's birthday party. She'd wanted to throw a party for her friends for the longest time, but their own house wasn't big enough to have a party at that scale, so she'd thought that I'd be selfless for once and let my little sister have this for herself. My mother accused me of being selfish and said that I had a massive house now and could afford to let people use it for their needs because it was not like her stepdaughter had done anything wrong, which was a load of bullcrap because not only had they been drinking, they'd also been blasting loud music and had literally trashed my entire house. I told her that they'd narrowly escaped a slap on the wrist, and she still wasn't understanding the full weight of what she and her daughter had actually done. She herself had lied to me and said that she'd only be using the house for her book club meeting and then let her stepdaughter take over because she wanted to impress her friends by throwing a party in a house that wasn't hers. The least they could have done was at least ask for permission first. But my mother said that even if she had asked first, I most certainly would have said no because I never liked my stepsister. That's what she'd concluded from our previous visit and all the years before that. And obviously that's not even true because, like I said before, it was my stepsister who always acted really weird and cold around me, not the other way around. I tried to be nice to her, but the efforts were always one-sided, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to win over an arrogant child. This argument with my mother went on for quite a while, but then I ended it by saying that now she was the one who had to pay for or arrange the cleanup because my house had been totally trashed by her daughter and her friends, and there was no way I was cleaning up after them all by myself. It was a huge house, and I didn't have the energy to do it all on my own anyway. But she refused and said that since it was my house and I'd been selfish enough to kick my stepsister out and embarrass her in front of all her schoolmates, Now I could deal with the trouble of cleaning up my house on my own too. Then she hung up before I could argue and blocked me everywhere. By then it was pretty late in the night, but I was furious at the way I was being treated, so in the heat of the moment, I decided to call her husband and told him the same thing. I then demanded that they pay for the ruckus that their daughter had caused immediately, and her husband thankfully was reasonable enough to cough up the money. He didn't sound too happy about it, but he did send me the money immediately, apologized for whatever my mother and his daughter had done, and said that he would speak to them and make them apologize to me as well. I told him that wasn't necessary, but he'd already disconnected the call by then. The next morning, I received a really angry call from my mother very early in the morning. Apparently, her husband had spoken to her and her stepdaughter after my phone call to him and chewed them out for what they'd done, and now my mother was mad at me because I'd involved her husband in something that he had no idea about in the first place. He grounded her daughter and had told my mother that both of them needed to apologize to me, but instead of apologizing, she decided to yell at me some more. She told me that her stepdaughter was right and I really was an arrogant and narcissistic bitch. I was shocked that my own mother was calling me these things, especially when I just tried to stand up for what I believed was right. I think I might have overstepped my boundaries by calling her husband up, but apart from that, I think whatever I'd said to her and asked of her was well within reason, but what she said to me was totally out of line. It's been 2 days since our last conversation, and I haven't even been able to talk to anyone about this. I can't believe my mother would say that about me, and even though we haven't been as close as we used to be for a couple of years, it still stings that she'd say such horrible things about me only to hurt me. I really don't understand where exactly I went wrong because as far as I'm concerned, I've been completely reasonable. I wouldn't even have called her husband if she didn't block me first. So I'd called my mother's husband to complain to him about her and her stepdaughter's behavior after she trashed my house during a party. Update 1. Hey guys, it's been a week since the party, and I'm back here to thank everyone for the huge response. Thanks to everyone who took out the time to comment on my original post with their opinion, regardless of what they had to say. So yeah, I didn't get back in touch with my mom, and I've decided to go no contact with her because of what happened earlier. I used to think that it was probably because of her husband that she'd started keeping her distance from me and my dad, but I guess it's actually because of her stepdaughter. She's the one who doesn't like me one bit, and I can't imagine why since I've tried my best to be nice to her, even though she's a total arrogant and smug brat. But I can't help it. My mother's made her choice, and I'm the one who has to live with it. Does it suck that she chose her stepdaughter over me? Yeah, kind of, but do I care anymore? No, I really don't, because that incident really showed me what I needed to see and what I needed to realize about my mother, that now her topmost priority was her stepdaughter and not me. So that's the way it was, and I just have to suck it up and deal with it. It's sad because I was looking forward to hosting Christmas at my house, but my mother will never get to see that happen. I haven't yet told my dad anything about it, even though he's back from vacation, but I just really don't want to talk to anyone about this right now. I just want to keep this to myself for a while, deal with it myself, and then maybe I'll bring it out in the open. This is a big deal for me, and I just don't feel like anyone else knows about this. Well, you guys are an exception because at least here I won't be bombarded with 50 questions about what happened and how I feel. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but this is the only way I can vent right now, so I'm thankful for this outlet. Update 2. Okay, so quick update. I finally told my boyfriend about what happened, and he was really understanding about it. He didn't ask too many questions because he knows that annoys me, and he just comforted me silently, so that was really nice of him. But I also told my dad about what had happened a few days back and my decision to cut ties with my mother, and he told me a couple of really interesting things that helped me make sense of my mom's sudden change in behavior. Apparently, her stepdaughter is a total mini-her, and that's why she's so in love with that kid. My parents went to the same high school but didn't start dating until later in life, but my dad knew that my mom was kind of the mean girl in high school and through college. So it was no surprise that she'd taken such a liking to her new stepdaughter because that girl was a replica of what she used to be back then. Unlike me, who had always been a bit of a nerd. I'm not shocked that my mother was a mean girl in school because she's still quite stunning and has the same aura about her. She can make just about anyone like her, but it was quite a huge surprise for me to learn that this might be one of the reasons why she suddenly liked her stepdaughter more than her biological daughter, me. It also probably didn't help that her stepdaughter's biological mother wasn't in the picture anymore, so she could fully step into the shoes of the mother she'd always wanted to be to the daughter she'd always wanted. I'm not saying it's exactly what happened, but there's a strong chance that my dad's theory might be correct. Either way, he's with me in my decision to cut her off and has blocked her himself as well because he believes that her behavior was unacceptable. I don't really know what to think about any of this, and I'm actually hoping it's not true. Update 3. Hi everyone. So it's been a while since I posted an update, but that's because I was busy thanking everyone. I recently got engaged about a week ago. My boyfriend and I had planned to celebrate our 3rd anniversary privately at home, but he surprised me by throwing a huge party at his house, one that I actually wanted. I gifted him the game that I bought for him, and he gave me the best gift I could have asked for, a ring on my finger. I'm thrilled about this, and I genuinely didn't expect this, but he'd been planning for this for a while now. I'm really happy that I got to share that moment with all my loved ones, my friends and my family. And to answer the million-dollar question that I know everyone's thinking about, no, my mother did not attend. My boyfriend, now fiancé, has asked her in spite of our ongoing tiff, and she flat out refused to attend. She'd even gone to the extent of saying that I'm no daughter of hers. So fine then, I don't care either way because now I know where I stand and don't have to deal with her and her arrogant stepdaughter anymore. I have my friends and my family to look out for me, so I don't need her negative energy around me anymore. It hurt when he told me about it, but I'm not going to let her hurt me anymore. My dad's here for me, my soon-to-be husband is here for me, my friends are here for me, and that's all I need. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Husband insists me to wear a tracker to monitor my every move and threatens divorce if I cheat on him, so I secretly pack up while he's away, file his own divorce papers, and ran before he returns. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 30M, who I'll call Alex. Alex and I met in college during our freshman year. We started off as just friends and got married 7 months ago. I've gotten along with his family, but we aren't super close. But we're friendly enough. The problem is that Alex has begun to make me incredibly uncomfortable. Firstly, he begun to ask me who I'm meeting with, where, what we plan on doing, and how long every single time I leave the house without him. At first, I just thought he was being protective and a good partner just in case something happened. But then he started checking my phone after the visits, vetting and researching each of my friends as well. He also has been pursuing me to link my bank account to his, as he's in charge of the finances, when he was perfectly fine with keeping them separate before. We fight about it almost every day. Finally, yesterday, when he was preparing to go on a work trip for 2 weeks in California, he demanded I wear a tracker so he could keep an eye on me while he's gone. I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm suffocating. His family, who I've spoken to about his worrying behavior, just said he's being careful and protective as a good husband should. I need to gather my things together and find a way to be gone before he gets home without tipping him off. He's always threatened that if he ever found me cheating on him, he'd turn in divorce papers the same day. He keeps a filled-out copy in his desk. I'm going to submit those the day I leave, but there's so much to do. Finding a new place to live, seeing if my job has any transfers available, packing, and moving. In 2 weeks, his return flight is May 11th, so I need to move quickly. I'm posting here because I don't have any close family and I can't risk dragging my friends into this, as we share the same friends. I just needed a place to vent and ask if anyone has any advice on the easiest and safest way to do this. Edit. Oh my God. You guys are amazing. I never even thought to not use his divorce papers. I'll check for cameras before I start any packing or prepping. I may also shred his divorce papers just in case, and look into getting a lawyer for myself. I'm in a no-fault divorce state, that much I do remember, which will help. I'll update again when I know more. The tracker he wants me to use is a small clip to put on the belt or waistband. I'll wear it unless I'm going or doing something related to me leaving. No pets yet, thankfully. Update 1. So, I've gotten a lot of support and helpful advice, along with questions I thought I should clarify before I proceed with the update. Some asked why I'd be hiding things from Alex regarding going out and who I'm meeting with. I don't, and I have nothing to hide. However, when he begins to then double-check everything I tell him with the other people, that's down to each person I talk to and what I said. Did I send any text MSGs? Did I order food? How much did I eat? That's when it started to feel like I was slowly being pushed into a corner. It didn't start that bad, but gradually grew worse over time. All of the Reddit subs my in-laws' families are part of are related to gardening and DIY, so I highly doubt they'll see this. If so, by the time they do, I'll hopefully be gone. I talked to my job and explained things to my manager, and they promised to look into openings in other states to see if they could get me into one. They'll have an update on that in 3 days. I trust that my bank account is secured, considering he's tried to get into it before and failed. I found one camera in the kitchen, another in the living room, and one in our bedroom. As such, I've left them in place for now and done all other planning either in the bathroom, pretending I'm taking a bath. I'm honestly staying away from the domestic violence services, as my sister-in-law is unfortunately high up in those, considering she volunteers there, and I have a feeling if I did show up there, they would know in a heartbeat. I can't look for apartments until I get the update from my work, but either way, I'm still going to be leaving the state. The day before I do, I will be changing my number carrier and wiping my laptop and all of my electronics. Before I do, I've met with 2 lawyers so far and had them look over the paperwork my husband had prepared, and both said that it did have some clauses in it that could have caused me some trouble down the line. What alarmed all of us was the fact that several of those clauses dealt with future children, and not as a hypothetical like several here suggested. I have a feeling he fully intended on getting me pregnant to keep me trapped and tied to him. There are 3 other locations my job could send me to. I have, as a precaution, begun looking into all 3 cities and housing in the areas, just in case one of those is the one they send me to. Even if they don't have an opening that they can push me into, then I will just have to quit, move, and figure things out on my own. I have enough money to live and survive for a few months until I can pick up another job. Unfortunately, all of our friends are mutuals and would likely be unaware of the consequences of saying or sharing anything I do or say with my husband. I don't have any surviving close family, and obviously, my in-laws are not a good resource to rely on. I am on my own, unfortunately, other than the wonderful bonds I've begun to make here. I will update again if I get more information or something else happens. Otherwise, I'll update when my work gets back to me. I do plan on leaving before he returns, though, just to make sure that I'm not anywhere near here at that time. Update 2. Good news. My work has an opening. I qualify for that will not only shift me across the country but also comes with a salary increase as well. I've started telling my in-laws and friends that I'm planning a surprise outing for when my husband gets back, for just the 2 of us. This way, people don't give me odd looks if they see me out and about. I've even gone as far as asking my MIL to show me his favorite recipes. Meanwhile, I found a moving company that, while small, is willing to work in a storm. The reason is, in 5 days we're supposed to get hit with a large storm front. I plan to shut off the breaker and say we lost power if he asks, just as several people here suggested, and even send him a short clip of the storm. I will have all of my stuff moved that afternoon, and I will be flying out once the weather has cleared enough to do so. I have a lawyer who will push my divorce through, and I've filled out the necessary paperwork so that I don't have to be here for it. I'm not suing for assets or alimony, and I've shredded his divorce papers as well. I've set up a cheap pay phone plan through Cricket until this is all said and done, at which point I will find a new carrier, number, and phone. This one is being wiped and left behind. My laptop is provided by my work, and the IT department inspected it thoroughly, and it was clean, thankfully. No other electronic aside from my laptop, and a new phone will be coming with me. If Alex needs to talk to me, he can do it through my lawyer. Not sure if anything else will happen. My fingers are crossed that he doesn't think anything is amiss until after I leave, and I'm not turning the breaker back on when I do. He can when he gets home. My work is covering the plane ticket so that at least is one expense I don't have to finagle in. Update 3. It's been a busy week, but I've gotten so much done. Firstly, I am now out of the house and am currently in a hotel while I look for an apartment. It's a big city, bustling with people no matter where you look. We had a pretty bad storm system hit back home that actually lasted 2 days. High winds, thunder, lightning, and even hail everywhere. I didn't take much from the house. My documents, clothes, and important sentimental items. I left all of the furniture and electronics behind. I cleaned the house top to bottom and took pictures on my phone, so he couldn't claim I damaged anything when I left. My lawyer has already started divorce proceedings and my husband will be served on the 8th. His plane is due to land early morning and the sheriff will be there at the house waiting for him. He is very much about public appearances and reputation. My lawyer will be calling him as well to inform him that I am more than willing to air out everything to the public about his actions if it means securing my freedom from him. I will go to court as long as I must to get this pushed through. I haven't told our friends or his in-laws yet. I will do that while he is on the flight to prevent him from getting wind of it before he's handed the divorce papers. I will be calling around and explaining why we're getting divorced to try and prevent him from twisting this into somehow being my fault. I don't want him trying to claim I had an affair or something, so I want to get the truth out before he can twist this. I'm doing okay. I'm tired, but yet I feel almost jittery and off-kilter. I keep looking over my shoulder and monitoring what I say, even when I don't really need to anymore. Hopefully that will fade soon. My work is covering the cost of the hotel and I'm working on getting my other things in order. I also need to find a new GP, as I want to get a full test just to make sure everything is okay. I don't know when my next update will be, probably when the divorce papers are filed or if we have to go to court to push them through. I will try to keep my head up, but it feels like I'm in a whirlwind or something with so many things to do and think about. I kind of thought it would be easier once I got out of the house, but while the fear is smaller, somehow the number of tasks only seems to have grown. Update 4. Sorry I haven't updated for a while. Things got hectic and a bit chaotic honestly. Firstly, I'm working on getting an apartment still and have applications in at 3 different places and will hopefully hear back from them soon. I'm still going into work here at the new location, so I don't have to worry about burning through my emergency savings completely. I've gotten a lot of emails from Alex, his family, and our old friend group asking question after question. I have only sent one return email to Alex explaining that I don't believe we are truly compatible and it is best we separate now, that his treatment of me when I'd done nothing to deserve as such was just as much of a deal breaker as cheating was for him. I ended the email with a statement that I would not be contacting him further and anything else he needed to pass on to me or vice versa would be done through my lawyer. For his family and friends, I just typed up one email outlining everything that had happened and why I left. I told them I wished them no ill will, but that such treatment of his wife and partner was not acceptable, that should Alex get remarried in the future, I wish they would help support both partners and not just Alex. Alex, from what my lawyer told me, was livid when he was served. The sheriff actually ended up booking him for assault on an officer and menacing due to the threats he was shouting. His father bailed him out in a few hours, but with the testimony of the sheriff, my lawyer believes I have a very good chance at getting a restraining order. Alex, upon returning to the house, apparently lost his temper again, breaking the dining table into pieces as well as the TV and putting several holes in the walls. At least that's what one of the emails from one of our friends reported, as Alex called him to help him clean up the mess. My lawyer already has pictures of the house I took with timestamps as evidence. Nothing had been damaged by me. My friend reported that Alex tried to claim I'd been the one to trash the house, but the holes in the wall were at head height. Alex is 6 feet 3 inches and I'm 5 feet 4 inches, so he knew that was false. Either way, taking the pictures definitely will help me, so again, thank you everyone here for the advice because I never would have thought of that on my own. My work won't share details of where I am, as I do work with some higher-end clientele who value security, and that information won't be gossiped about. And no, I'm not some stripper or escort. I deal with contracts, notary, and business management. As such, even if Alex tried to use my work to find me, he wouldn't succeed. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Discovered my husband of 7 years was cheating with a young coworker, so I got revenge by sending proof to all their FNF while blindsiding him with divorce papers and getting him fired. I, 35F, have been married to my husband, 34M, for 7 years. We've never really had any problems beyond regular couple issues in our relationship, and we were able to establish a really strong foundation of trust by telling each other pretty much everything that is happening in our lives. If a guy comes up to me and asks for my number at the supermarket, I tell him. If a female friend is being really touchy with him, he'll let me know as soon as he gets home. This has been our arrangement for years, and it's worked great for both of us. The issue started when I was putting his clothes into the laundry and emptying out the pockets, as all of us should do, not just to prevent money or valuables from being ruined, but because this was what set the entire thing into motion for me. I found a receipt from a relatively fancy restaurant in our area, and based on what was ordered, it was clear that it was a dinner for two. My husband hadn't told me anything about this, so while my first instinct was suspicion, I felt that there must have been an explanation of some sort for it. I confronted him with what I had found, and he actually did have a pretty good explanation for it. My husband is a corporate guy, the kind of person who wears a suit to work every day. His job also calls pretty frequently for him to try and sugar up potential clients, so according to him, that receipt was from a client that he took to dinner to discuss things a bit further with. I asked him why he didn't tell me about it like he usually does, but he said it was simply because it slipped his mind by the time he got back home and that the deal wasn't closed in the end. He didn't seem to have to think much before telling me all of this, so I believed it right away. The only gripe I had with him then was that we hadn't gone to that restaurant together since we had been wanting to. Anyway, I trusted my husband, as I've said, so I never really thought anything else of what had happened. There really wasn't a reason to, just based on seeing a receipt. Things went back to normal pretty quickly after that, and we didn't have any issues with each other for quite a few months. However, things boiled up again between us about a month later when a friend of mine called me one evening and said that she bumped into my husband with a woman on his arm. She just happened to be in a part of the city that was a bit far off and spotted him across the road. I asked her if she was sure it was him, but she said she actually crossed the road and spoke to him. When he saw her, he let go of the woman but seemed to act normal beyond that. He didn't seem too flustered. She said her only regret was she didn't ask him what he was doing in that part of town, and they went their separate ways soon after. Right before they turned the corner, she saw the woman clasp onto his arm again. At this point, all the alarms in my head started to blare. I thought briefly about the receipt I had found in his pocket, but honestly, I didn't make too much of a connection because it still could have been a business dinner. But this on its own was for him to have a lot of explaining to do as soon as he got back home, which was around 11 p.m. He could tell that something was off with my mood, and he asked me what was wrong right away. Considering my friend hadn't hidden herself, I think he already knew what it was about, but he waited for me to say it. When I told him and asked him to explain himself, he just chuckled and shook his head lightly. According to him, that woman was one of his coworkers, and there was nothing going on between them. They had gone for a business dinner with some clients that the company was trying to get on board, so about 4 people from his company had attended with him. The female coworker that my friend saw had too much to drink, and that was why she was supporting herself on him. Here's the thing. I realized that my husband had time to think of a story because he knew my friend would have told me, but for some reason I believed him. Maybe it was because I had always trusted him, or because I was in denial and I didn't want the mess that would come about from this being what I hoped it wasn't, but it was so easy for me to believe him, and that was what I chose to do. He even hugged me afterward, saying that he would have told my friend if she had asked so that I wouldn't have had to worry myself. He apologized for stressing me out and told me that I really had nothing to worry about, that he was mine and mine alone. At that point, all my suspicions dissolved. At this point, things went fine for about 6 months straight. No accounts of anyone seeing him traipsing around town with women. No stray and unexplained receipts in suit pockets. Things seemed normal, and I honestly didn't find myself dwelling on whether my husband was cheating on me or not. However, this peace of mind really only lasted that long, and it was after the 3rd event that everything started to crumble. My husband came back home pretty late one night. It was nearly midnight, and he had texted me at some point during the night that he was doing the usual whining and dining for one of the clients that his company was trying to win over. Again, it wasn't the first time in the 6-month period, so I didn't think too much of it. He came back a little tipsy, and it was when I went in to hug him that I smelled what was distinctly feminine perfume. I immediately asked him why he smelt like a woman's perfume, but I tell you that this man told me straight to my face that it was his usual perfume. He's been wearing the same Tom Ford fragrance to work for the last 2 years, so I don't think it is ridiculous for me to be able to tell when he smells like something different. I told him it was a different fragrance, but he only maintained that it was his usual scent, and he told me I was acting delusional, which was an out-of-character thing for him to say to me. He gently pushed past me and went upstairs. I think this was the first time that I really knew something was wrong because I started to feel like I was being gaslight. It was then that the thing with the receipt and what my friend had seen came back to me, and suddenly I was extremely suspicious. I was halfway up the stairs wanting to confront him, But I actually realized that he would probably gaslight me again until I felt like I was losing my mind or being an emotional woman or something. I still went upstairs, though, because I knew he was in the shower. He had undressed with his clothes lying on the bed and his phone beside it. I had to smell his suit and his shirt again because I needed to be sure I wasn't actually losing it, and sure enough, I was 100% certain it wasn't his Tom Ford perfume that I was smelling on it. At that point, I went straight into his phone. I went into the gallery app first, and right there were the pictures taken that night. It was him at some kind of lounge with a young woman. She looked like she was 23 or something, cozied up to him. There was even a picture of them kissing while she held the phone for a selfie. I felt like I was going to explode. I took a video with my own phone, swiping through all the pictures. I was about to enter his messaging app, but I could hear him rounding up in the bathroom, so I let it go. Honestly, I wanted to confront him so badly, but I needed to know more because I felt like he'd find a stupid way to explain away the kiss, and I might actually fall for it. I know I hate how much I wanted to trust him. It didn't take long for him to fall asleep, so I grabbed his phone and jumped into the messaging app. The first 2 messages were people from work, but the last one was someone called Sabrina, and I hadn't heard anything about her before, so I assumed this was the mystery girl, and I was right. I went through the messages, and I really can't tell you when tears started streaming down my face. He had told her he loved her, called me all sorts of names. They had reminisced about nights they had just had. There were nudes exchanged, and I don't know when I had gone far enough to see him sending pictures from the night that they had at the same restaurant I had seen the receipt of. I really hope that nobody here has to go through what I went through, because in that moment, I actually felt like there was nothing left for me. I felt absolutely broken. Some pretty dark thoughts went through my mind as I looked over at him sleeping. After 7 years of marriage, I know better now, but I remember thinking about how I do my best to look good, eat healthy, and go to the gym. I know for a fact that I look good for my age, but it destroyed my self-esteem thinking about some of the comments that he made about me and my body, and they both laughed about it. I think it was exactly that radicalized me and made me realize that I needed to make sure that this man hurt badly. I had to take videos of the entire chat, slowing down for the parts where he took her to restaurants, hotels, and shopping. He seemed to enjoy sending her pictures. I drank myself to sleep that night. In the morning, I tried to be my usual self so that he wouldn't suspect anything. I don't think I did a great job of it, but he didn't seem to notice much. He was a completely different person to me now. I am not shy to say that I resented him. Once he was out of the house, I knew that I had to find out who this woman was. I didn't know her last name, but when I searched for Sabrina in the list of my husband's friends on Facebook, there she was. It was the same face that I had seen kissing him, so I was sure it was her. The real shocker was me finding out that they worked at the same company, and going by her job title, she was likely one of his junior colleagues. At this point, I knew her name and I had evidence that they were doing things together, and I wanted to make sure that I hurt them both. Looking back, I think I became unhealthily obsessed with that idea, but ultimately I was simply seeking closure and revenge in my own way, and I'm happy that I found what I was looking for. Honestly, that's all that really matters to me. The first thing that I did was get in contact with a divorce lawyer. Ironically, the same friend of mine who had seen my husband with who I assume was Sabrina, I eventually confirmed from my friend that it was her, had gotten divorced about 2 years earlier, and she was a big fan of her lawyer, so I hit her up, gave her a long update on everything that had happened since we last spoke, and she sent me the number of the lawyer right after we ended the call. I was talking to the lawyer to set up an appointment. It was about a few days later when I went to see the lawyer. I showed him all the evidence that I had and told him as much as I knew about my husband's affair. It was funny to me when he had the biggest smile on his face, because according to him, this is as sweet as a divorce case can get. He said that I had evidence of my husband's cheating, I had evidence of our marital funds that had been spent on his affair with the shopping, restaurants, and fancy hotels, and I even had a potential issue with his workplace, considering the fact that his affair partner was a junior employee who might potentially be directly under his influence, though I wasn't too certain about this part. Either way, speaking to the lawyer actually had me feeling great. One thing I might not have mentioned earlier is that my husband always wanted me to be a housewife. He said his income was great enough for the both of us, and all he needed was for me to keep the home in order, especially ahead of us potentially having children. I have a lot of things that I volunteer for, so that's usually what takes up my time. But besides that, I've been his lovely, obedient housewife all these years while he was cheating on me with who knows how many women. About 2 weeks after meeting with the divorce lawyer, my husband had to go on a business trip in another state. This isn't the first time he's had to do this, but it was definitely the first time that I felt like he was going to be sleeping with other women or Sabrina. I had lost all trust for the man, and it was actually rather shocking that I had managed to stay in the house with him for as long as I had without going at his throat. It was after he told me he had landed that I decided to get things going. Now, I'm changing Sabrina's last name here. Let's say it's Mueller. That's not a super common last name, so I assumed that everyone in her friends list on Facebook was a relative of hers. I composed a pretty long message talking about how Sabrina had been sleeping with my husband, knowing that he was a married man, and I even put some screenshots of the nastiest parts of their text conversations minus the raunchy photos and videos, of course. I sent it to every single one of them and then put my phone on DND. A few hours later, some people had replied in shock and apologizing. Some had cursed me out, and most had said nothing at all, but I wasn't doing any of this for their responses. My husband had also called me about 15 times, which means he knew I knew. To be honest, I hadn't really planned out what I was going to do at this point, but I hoped that he would have to go through with the business trip, continue to stew as I refused to pick his phone calls, and then when he got back, I'd serve him with the papers. While waiting for this to happen, though, I made sure to pack as much of his stuff as possible into the suitcases that we had. I wasn't going to be thrown out of the house for being the faithful one. I also called over my brother because I realized I didn't know my husband the way I thought I did, and honestly, I was fearful that he could come back in some kind of a rage, especially if I was to serve him with papers, so my brother stayed over for the next 2 days until my soon-to-be ex-husband came back from his business trip. As soon as he opened the door and saw me, he started cursing and shouting, calling me all sorts of names. Fortunately, my brother stepped between us and handed him the papers. He looked shocked for just about a second, but it seemed it didn't take long for it to sink in that that was a logical progression of events. From behind my brother, I told him that I had packed his bags and he wasn't going to sleep in our house that night. That was the scariest that I had ever seen him look, but he couldn't do anything about it. Instead, he just stood there, fists clenched, and eventually took the divorce papers and his suitcases and left. I didn't see him again until it was time for the divorce proceedings to start, and so that I won't bore you with the lengthy details, I'm glad to say that things went extremely well for me. It's hard to fight against such obvious evidence of infidelity. Plus, the judge didn't take kindly to the fact that he and his affair partner seemed very unremorseful about the entire thing. Our money being spent to fund his affair, too, another nail in the coffin. I got the house and a very handsome alimony arrangement since I basically did not work, so he'd need to be supporting me from wherever he was. Honestly, he could be with Sabrina for all I cared, but I felt like I had one. I didn't care who got a cheating man. It just hurt that I had loved him for so many years, and this is how things ultimately turned out. Now the story is almost done, but I honestly had one final piece of my plan. Once the divorce was finalized, I wrote to his workplace about the allegations of a senior employee having a very inappropriate relationship with someone junior to him in the workplace. I sent all the evidence I had, once again being sure to blur out the explicit content. I was not going to allow myself to be hit with some kind of revenge porn charge. It took a couple of days, but I got a response talking about how the situation was being investigated as my claims were very serious, as Sabrina Mueller was a direct subordinate to my ex-husband. About 2 weeks later, I got twofold confirmation that my ex-husband had lost his job. The first one was him calling me to curse me out and scream every expletive in the book, and the second one was an email from the company informing me that the investigation had been concluded and the necessary action had been taken against my ex-husband. Honestly, I think once I read that, it was like a sudden relief came over me. I think that was closure. I don't consider myself to be an evil or vindictive person, but I think that realizing that someone you loved and thought you could trust wholeheartedly had no issues cheating or gaslighting you is enough to change a person. All I'll say to the women out there is to beware. You can trust a man, but don't trust too deeply, because I learned that you can never truly know who someone is 100%. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Made my mom my maid of honor to bring us closer, but she hated my friends, ruined my bachelorette party, and didn't show up to my wedding. Now only texts me to pay her phone bills. So, a few months back, I had a bachelorette trip to Puerto Rico. Two of my bridesmaids were able to go, and my mother and sister came as well. I asked my mom to be the maid of honor since I thought it would help create a closer bond between us. Getting ready for my wedding, my whole goal was to have everyone get along and just have a good time. I should have known this was going to be a disaster. A couple of weeks before, my mother started bashing all of my friends. She was particularly focused on one that was actually going on the trip. I ended up paying for my mom, sister, and my own flight to help the burden of my mom having to pay for both her and my sister. The plan was my mother was going to pay for her and my sister's hotel. My friend reached out to everyone to try and plan something for me without me getting involved. I would like to add that I planned the bachelorette trip as the bride. When my friend reached out to my mom and called her, she wanted to help as much as she can. My friend is actually Puerto Rican, so she was going to be a huge help with this trip. At the time, I did not know about this call. My mother called me at 3 a.m. after having that call with my friend that day to tell me she has not been doing her maid of honor duties because she was observing everyone and everything. She then said, as the maid of honor, she should be planning the bachelorette trip. I found this conversation odd, but I said, okay. I was relieved that she finally stepped up to help me with the trip. My mom did say before the call ended to not tell my friend she talked to me about this, which I did find odd as well. The next day, my friend called me and told me that she wanted to make sure that I had a great bachelorette to remember, that it is all about me. She wanted to help me with the excursions I wanted to do, and I told her my mom wanted to plan as well so they could work together. I saw my mother the next day, and she went on a rant that my friend was disrespectful and said she was not letting a little girl control her on this trip, and made it seem like something was wrong with my friend and how she did not want to wear her stupid t-shirts during the trip. She started raging and telling me she doesn't want to go in the rental car with my friend and wants to take an Uber. Her words, "Your friend is disrespectful, and I will beat his ass." This automatically started stressing me out. She said she didn't like my friend, and she was disrespectful and has issues. I ended up calling my friend and asking her if she could cancel the rental, and she said she could not. I created a group chat for the ones attending the trip, and my friend was asking questions about why activities we were going to do and how excited she was, and my mom and sister were instantly annoyed. My mom was supposed to plan the activities that we were going to do in Puerto Rico. She refused to let my friend do it or participate in helping, and again, my friend is Puerto Rican. Fast forward to the first day of the bachelorette trip. When we arrived, my mom's luggage was missing that had all of her toiletries. She was upset about it. When we got to the hotel, I let everyone rest since it was an early flight. My friend got there a little later in the day, and I met up with her and my other friend in the lobby. I called my mom and sister to meet us downstairs so we could go with them to replace the toiletries that were lost and to have dinner. As me and my two friends were waiting, my mom came downstairs and stood behind my Puerto Rican friend and said, "Hi," to her so low that she could not hear her. I hinted to her that my mom was standing over and behind her while she was sitting on the lobby couch, which I thought was weird. She turned around and said, "Hello." My mom instantly just said, "Okay, I'm leaving now. Now go be with your friends." She literally ran off. My sister did not say a word. When I tell you the energy was so off, you could cut the tension in the air with a knife. I asked my friend what was going on with her and my mom because something just felt really off. She told me she did not really know her, so she did not understand why. I decided to just go to the bar with my friends and wait for my mom and sister to get back. 5 minutes later, I get a text from my mom saying, "Shame on you. You betrayed your family. You chosen nobody over your own family. I am disappointed, and your sister and I are out of the way." I responded and said that I did not and asked what the problem was. I was then ignored. I started crying hysterically because I did not want my bachelorette to be like this. My friends tried to cheer me up and took me out to dinner. I decided to let things cool off and try to smooth things over in the morning with my mom and sister. I went to my mom and sister's room and knocked on the door several times and kept going back to knock on the door. I also called each of them and no answer. I even waited around the lobby to see if I ran into them, and nothing. I called both of them again later in the afternoon, and finally my sister picked up. I asked if they were okay and if we can squash whatever happened and move forward with the plans. I asked why they did not answer me for hours, and they said they were sleeping, which I knew was a lie because I heard someone look through the peephole when I knocked earlier. My sister said they are not doing any of the activities that I wanted to do and that they were having lunch and would not tell me where they were. I felt like shit. My mom planned nothing that she said she was going to plan. My friend even texted and reached out to my mom and apologized for whatever my mom thought she did and called, and my mom did not answer. My friend scrambled and tried to make the best of the rest of the trip for me while my mom and sister were MIA. The day before we had to leave and go home, my sister reached out to get their plane tickets, which I purchased. I sent it to them and was immediately upset. My mom asked me to put my credit card down for her in my sister's hotel and said she would pay me back. I honestly think that she had no intention of paying me back because she is my mother. They ignored me during the entire trip and now demanded their plane tickets. I decided to change my flight and leave earlier. I couldn't sit on the plane with my mom and sister and act like this was normal. My sister called and asked if I was going to get a new to the airport, and I told her no, I have a different flight. My mom finally appeared and called me and said so many hurtful things. My mom told me I was always disloyal, how I interpreted everything wrong. I overthink, I don't care about her and my sister, how I was feeling is wrong, and called me a liar and hung up in my face. My friend started to tell me about the phone conversation that she had with my mom prior. She didn't want to tell me out of respect for my mother because my mom asked her not to tell me about the phone conversation. My friend said my mom was talking badly about me, my fiancé's family, and how I was planning my wedding. My friend was put in this awkward position. Ever since that trip, I have not spoken to my mom or sister, and they did not show up to my wedding. I only get a text from my sister to tell me to pay both her and my mom's phone bill once a month. And that is it. Now for some comments. Comment 1. My eyebrows rose when your mom called your friend a little girl. Those are big words from someone who allegedly needed their trip paid for. Are you cutting them off financially? It's okay if you do. They don't treat you with love and care, so why should they receive it from you? Opie. I plan on cutting them off. The only thing left to cut off is this phone bill situation. I am nervous about doing it because it is going to create more conflict that I don't need. Comment 2. And I got you. Send them a text and/or registered mail stating that you will no longer pay their cell phone bills as of date. Then mute them on your phone in case they type anything incriminating and you need it for evidence, and block them on social media. Get cameras for your property. Don't answer the door if they stop by. Call the cops if they escalate. They can't cause conflict if you're avoiding them. Opie. Thanks for the advice. Comment 3. You tried your best, and so did your friend, and your POS egg donor and sister ruined it. It is time to cut them off for a long while, at least until you forget how they treated you and gaslight yourself into thinking it wasn't that bad. But for now, cut them off and do not pay for their phone bill. Since you are not family to them, why would you pay for anything of theirs? They already had you pay for the trip and their hotel stay, so I would say you are done with their crap. Comment 4. Your mother totally ignored the fact that the bachelorette party was about you and not her. Did I miss something? Why would you pay their phone bills at all? Opie. Something I've been doing for 10 years, since I was in college. My mother made that my responsibility when I was living with her and going to school. It was a real struggle to do when I was in college. She never took that responsibility back. Comment 5. As others suggested, it is time to stop paying her bill. Just tell her that you will deduct the cost from hers and sister's airfare since she absolutely ruined your bachelorette trip. I hope your wedding was all you wanted it to be without the drama. Comment 6. And hubby have many years of happiness. Update. Thank you all for the advice, commentary, and inputs. I wanted to follow up on the original post that I posted. So far, I have gone no contact with my mother and sister. I ended up getting a new phone line and phone number. I texted my sister to let her know I will no longer be paying for her or my mother's phone bill anymore. I then cut off that phone and moved on with my new phone line. I blocked and removed them from all social media as well. Once I did that, my mother decided to appear and attempt to call me at my job, stating that there was an emergency and she needed to speak with me. I told my colleague that I would not be answering the phone and there is no emergency and to not answer my work phone line if she does call. After that, she has not made any more attempts. I believe she tried to call to bully me into paying their phone bill and try to do the guilt trip and shame me like she attempted to do on my bachelorette trip, but I was not falling for it. I also cut off my sister's Apple Music, which I know she would be pissed about. It all felt good. I also found out that my mother added her husband's phone installment plan to the bill a year ago without telling me, and that literally pushed me over the edge. I didn't notice it because it was an installment plan that only brought the bill up $35. That $35 a month adds up over time. This added up to me paying $500 for it before I cut everything off. I mean, who has their daughter paying for their husband's brand new iPhone 14? How does anyone sit there comfortable doing that to their own daughter? This I will never understand. It has been 7 months so far since I decided to go no contact. I can say that my life has been more peaceful with no drama. It has brought me and my husband closer together. I can truly say I'm happy and starting to get back to being me again. My relationship with my mom and sister was toxic and put me in a really dark place. Everything that happened during that trip has opened my eyes, and I am looking forward to better things, and I plan on redoing my bachelorette trip the right way. Comments. Comment 1. I could have written this. I'm on month 4 of NC with mom and sister. Life is peaceful and drama-free. Opie. You had issues with both? What made you make that decision? Comment 2. My sister is an avid COVID denier and believes that Democrats hook-rape children to a machine to steal their adrenaline. Dumber than a rock. She involved family members in that nonsense online and refused to apologize. It was last straw to me. She can't be around my family/kids. Mother took up for her keyboard warrior daughter, who is a sponge off her for almost 10 years now. That's the very short version. And I should have cut them off 30 years ago. My life would have been more peaceful and less embarrassing. Comment 3. I will never jeopardize the beans. Life can be more peaceful and easier once you cut off people who are massively entitled and terrible. 'Cause damn, this mother really is full of entitlement, manipulation, and bigotry. I never met entitled people before, but I can't imagine how I would respond if I ever deal with one. Good for OP at the end of the day. Comment 4. I've cut off my mother, and it was the best decision in my life. I should have done it sooner, but it's better late than never. Comment 5. I asked my mom to be the maid of honor, since I thought it would help create a closer bond between us getting ready for my wedding. Oh, I just knew from this the rest was going to be a tire fire. Comment 6. Mom was absolutely being a pill before this, and OP asked her to be the Mo in the hope it would rein in her behaviors. OP. See, since I thought it would help create a closer bond between us. And that was the red flag that told me that they were not close at all. Watch Ian Fern. It's like asking someone who you meet on the train to be your maid of honor because you want to be their friend, but worse. Comment 7. One of my cousins had a near-complete stranger as a groomsman cause his wife wanted an even wedding party. So while they were renting the suits, a dude had in there getting his son measured for prom, and my cousin was talking to him and just invited him to be a groomsman. Now on to the next story. Story 6. After 6 years of marriage, I discovered my wife's flirty pics and secret affair with a cop. She knew him from high school. I, 35M, wife, 34F, recently engaged in an apparent emotional affair for 3 to 4 months until she got caught. And I'm looking for some advice. We have been married for 6 years, together for 8. D-Day was 7 days ago. How I found out. I got a new bank card and forgot to update our wireless cellular provider payment. After updating with a new card, something compelled me to check the call logs of her phone. She had been distant, aloof, and texting late night. I didn't feel like checking her cell phone / feeling like a jealous husband, but maybe the call logs would be a good litmus stone to check if anything was wrong. What I saw just raised some alarms. The minutes of conversation with this phone number were greatly larger than any other number combined. She was also calling him late at night / early in the morning when she was away from home visiting her parents. She was also calling him during her workday. One day, she was on the phone with him for 3 to 4 hours. I did a reverse phone number search and found that this one particular person was a good friend of hers from a long time ago. After confronting her with this and wanting to know what was going on, her initial story was that he was just a friend, has a stressful job and needed support. He is a police officer and she greatly respects and is interested in law enforcement in general, almost going to the academy herself. After I asked if she felt that there were any boundaries being broken here, she replied with no, but then changed her story. I asked her to tell me the complete story and that I was a man and could take it, but if she downplayed, lied, or omitted, that would not be great, as we would be stepping over. Over the course of the next 3 to 5 iterations of the story, it has changed from being a good friend to someone who needed support, harmlessly flirting over text, sharing an "I love you" over text message, digital flirty messages over text, telling fantasies with her just listening, sharing semi-bare pictures over text message, picture of her in inners in a sexy pose. My wife and him planning on her leaving me and moving in with him. They never met physically to hook up. However, he did bring her coffee at her workplace, and they did meet at a gas station. During her self-disclosure, she constantly downplayed by using the "it just happened. I had no intention of this getting this far, and it was stupid." She also tried to deflect and lay blame, accusing me of cheating/having a relationship with someone online. Not true, although I did watch pornography. Unfortunately, she has chosen to delete all text messages, so there is no proof. She tried to restore the messages, but they were not being saved into iCloud. She is working on writing down a timeline of what has happened. I asked her if she loved this man, and she said she did not. It was an escapist fantasy. They talked about how I was emotionally unavailable and that I would rather be watching movies/in front of a computer screen instead of spending time with my wife. I've been suffering from depression for a while and feel like this is an unhealthy behavior on my part. I was also withdrawn and snappy with my wife. When I went to leave to gain some space/time to think, my wife physically confronted me and did not let me leave to clear my head. She then proceeded to threaten to kill herself, taking a loaded gun and pointing it to her head. She said that she didn't want to live a life without me and that I would get everything in the divorce if she killed herself. I called her father before I left for work that day, saying that I was worried about her physical safety and that I don't think me calling off work to deal with it would be appropriate, considering it would be like throwing fuel into a fire. We had dinner, and his take on it is that we should move and just reset by renewing our vows, wiping the entire slate clean. When he left, she then drafted some suicide notes to me and her family members, not going into particulars but saying that she was at fault. The why she provided. She needed to feel validated and beautiful, and I was not providing that. She also wanted to be listened to and heard. I believe that I have been emotionally detached, and I own that. I do want to believe her that it may not have been physical, but I don't think I will ever know for sure. I reached out to the AP via text message and said that I was not angry at him. I didn't marry him, I married my wife. He has since blocked my wife from calling/texting. She tried to reach him while I was in the room on speakerphone. I am interested in getting his side of the story as there are no text messages to confirm. Since then, my wife has been bargaining/wanting me to sleep in the same room with her. She has been initiating sex, and truth be told, it is amazing. We've done things we have never done before in 6 years of marriage. However, part of me is feeling like I'm not getting the full story. I wish she had told me everything up front, and I still have a nagging feeling that I still do not know everything. My worst fear. This is all theatrics and smokescreen, and I still don't know the full story because she has consistently lied/admitted some things that she felt would hurt me to hear. Any new discovery, if I plan on reconciling, would be a fresh wound and start back at stage 0, as my trust in her is completely vanished. I don't want to be an amateur NSA agent tracking down my wife to keep her honest. Any impartial third-party advice would be helpful. I know that in some part my actions may have driven her to this result. Update 1. I've arranged for the firearms to be stored off premises until this thing de-escalates. I will be doing this when she is out of the house, so today during her work shift. We had some talks. She is willing to take a polygraph, and she swears it was never physical. She acknowledges that what she shared and talked about was wrong. Her timeline of events. 1. They went to the same high school together and used to work together. They used to talk somewhat frequently, but never about romance/sex. He has always had a thing for her, apparently. She never found him attractive but respected him a lot because of what he ended up doing professionally and seems to be in love with the idea of a cop. I apparently met him once. He's extremely short and not as attractive. 2. Meeting 1 at the gas station. This took place before they ever started this engagement/talking and they caught up. This is what sparked the affair taking place. 3. They shared their first "I love you" when he mentioned how bad of a day he was having, how difficult his job was, and how he was thinking about destroying himself. He said it first. 4. She increasingly called him. Looking at the logs, she was calling him for 2 to 3 hours during her workday, also calling on the weekends/evenings. 5. They had gradually began increasing their call volume/texting volume over time. He would spout crap like wanting to see her bare, wanting to give her a BJ with glasses, wanting to bend her over the police cruiser. Her words are that she didn't participate as much but also didn't stop it. 6. She sent him pictures of herself. Some random photos fully clothed, a couple of photos from her family's house where she was helping deal with her recently deceased grandmother's belongings and babysitting our nephew. She sent pictures of our nephew to him one day when he was having a bad day. She sent a picture of her shirt pushed up and her inners showing to him to cheer him up. 7. Meeting 2. He met at her workplace to bring her coffee. 8. The final contact with him is, he knows and we need to end this. She is saying that it never got physical and that she had no desire to get to that point. From my POV, there is no way of knowing. She still hasn't finished writing the timeline, but it is already 6 pages longhand. I've come to accept that I may never know and that I have to prepare myself for that and for in the future if she decides to do this again. I think we had a mini breakthrough today when after a long day yesterday, I had neglected to put my laundry in the basket, instead laid it on the floor besides the bed. She was extremely snappy with me, and I said, "I'm sorry, but there are 1,000 ways you could have brought that up. Why did you choose to escalate that badly over laundry?" I discussed with her that maybe this is why I had the habit of hiding out in the man cave over the last year or so. A lot of these little interactions have probably caused me to be avoidant because they are not positive interactions. She paused to think, and I think a light bulb came on. She still will not let me leave or have space. I've been trying to sleep in separate rooms because 1, she's ovulating, and 2, I need time to process these emotions, events, and plan. I am not making any rash decisions in the next 30 days, and I am preparing myself for the worst. We have some scheduled therapist appointments. One thing about being a BS. How best to handle the plans we had before D-Day. 1. Our anniversary is coming up in a week or 2. I had scheduled a fancy night out with my wife, still good to go. 2. Her birthday is also coming up very soon, and I had made plans/gifts. 3. She has a camping trip planned with her family, and she wants me to go. 4. We have family vacation, her family, coming up. Is it wise to go? Or would I feel like I'd be sold a crap sandwich during this time? I want to leave the door to reconciliation open but also want to protect myself. Right now at this moment, I feel like I'm carrying the burden by arranging the weapons to be stored offsite and caring about my wife's mental well-being. I don't want to do anything rash until she gets the help she needs. Update 2. I ordered the Not Just Friends book. She has agreed to not contact him. She ended it with a phone call saying that it is over. He is also blocking her. I don't know why. She agreed to tell me immediately if he reaches out or shows up at her workplace. We're still in the process of this. She is still putting the timeline together. She is focusing on the content of the messages and phone conversations but not the meaning behind them / where her headspace is. I know I was getting complacent. I also harbored some resentment with her running up credit card debts earlier in the marriage without telling me. To this end, I was becoming emotionally unavailable and pursuing some not-so-healthy habits. I felt like we were not going in the same direction, and instead of having those difficult conversations, I chose to isolate myself or distract myself with work, video games, YouTube, and crap. At the end of the day, I still don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm committed to not making any major decisions in the near term. My wife is undergoing intensive outpatient therapy, so I feel like my decision may be delayed. My priorities now are my wife's health and safety as well as my own, and figuring out what I want to do, observing my wife's behavior and finding out what this other relationship meant to her and whether she genuinely wants to reconcile or is too afraid to separate. Update 3. She has read the book about not just friends and even completed more modules than I have on the 7-day affair recovery boot camp, where they discuss how important it is to disclose everything that happened. Her version of the story is that she felt alone in the marriage, and it was nice that someone listened to her and that she got sucked into the emotional talks because she did not have the proper boundaries in place. We celebrated her birthday with a small celebration. I had already bought her a present. She decided not to go camping. She wanted to be physically present while we were talking through things, going through the boot camp, and reading the Not Just Friends book. We did go out for our anniversary because the food is excellent and reservations are hard to come by. She suggested going to Victoria's Secret for me to pick something sexy out for her, but I declined. It was very bittersweet. I feel heavily conflicted, and I wonder if this is normal. At one end, I still love her and do want to work things through. Sometimes it seems like she is making a genuine effort in building back the trust. However, there are little happenstances where I ask for her phone and there is some resistance to her surrendering it. Invasive thoughts about her actually not cutting off contact with the AP. When I had looked through her phone, I noticed that she had Instagram and was still friends with the AP and reached out to talk. She did this without informing me about it. AP has remained silent, or so it seems, so I don't think I'm getting any information from him. Even if I did, I wonder if he would be honest/truthful about the matter, as he has a lot to lose in this. Part of me wants to pack up and leave and go through the divorce process. I feel unattractive to my wife and I don't want to go through with a marriage where this happens again. She attests that it will not, but I feel like I don't know everything that happened, nor do I understand what caused my wife to pursue this AP like a puppy dog. She asserts it was one-sided and they mainly talked about work and life in general, but the call logs show her calling him a lot. Is it normal for the BS to be somewhat ambivalent? What are things I can do to get assurance that this won't happen again with this AP or a year/2 down the road? Forgive my wife so that I can move on from this? I feel like she hasn't had a taste of consequences. In fact, it seems that I am becoming a better husband to her, which is good overall, I think. Is this a common stumbling block where the BS just has to eat it? How do I determine if this is true remorse? Update 4. One thing that was concerning me, and I don't know if I am justified in thinking this, but I want to know the content of those messages. I've tried various recovery software, and it seems like there is no way to recover if the phone was reset from an iCloud backup. She freaks out every time I try and becomes apprehensive when I attempt to recover them, even though they fail. I think it could be that it progressed further than her letting on. They physically met up/had sex multiple times. She was more passionate than leading on, sending more photos/vids. She said disparaging things about me/our marriage that she doesn't want me to see. Still in contact. Neither of these options are good. I think she's just beginning to realize the pain. For instance, when I get angry or flooded, I try to take some time away, and I say that I'm taking some time to cool off. She is big on physical touch, so she reaches out to hold my hand, rub the back of my head, or hug during these moments. She does ask what she can do to help, so I think we're both just figuring out what that looks like. Her story was that she wanted to reach out to see if he had time to talk with me and send the message logs that they both shared. I had discussed this with her prior and even reached out to the AP directly, but AP was non-responsive. She texted/called him in front of me but didn't do the IG chat in front of me as I didn't know they were IG friends at the time. I've been adjusting to the changes and working with my individual counselor as well as seeing our marriage counselor regular, not without some hiccups. We went on the planned vacation, but sometimes I felt like such a chump. I feel like I'm betraying myself/my integrity, but we did have some good times. Sometimes I look back and spiral. It was so bad one day that I wanted to book a flight and leave mid-vacation. What the hell am I doing? This person, 2 months ago, was texting/calling another man daily, participating in sexual texts, sending photographs, and lied about the entire thing until I dragged it out of her, and here we are going on vacation together like nothing happened. She has allowed me access to her computer and phone on demand. She has installed the Life 360 app so we know where each other are at all times. However, at the end of the day, I understand that if she wanted to cheat, she could still do so, as there are ways around these methods. We are still living together, sleeping in the same room, having sex frequently. It's hard to complain if you're getting laid regularly, but this could be a manipulative tactic to distract/make me shut up. We are slowly working on reconnecting, and we are planning dating events together. Sometimes I feel like I did when I first dated her, and I'm extremely hopeful about the future, as our relationship was not meeting either of our needs. And other times, I feel like I'm living in a house where the roof can cave in at any moment, wondering why she chose to have an emotional affair and whether there is more that she is not telling me. Over some time, our conversations have been less intense emotion-fueled outbursts and more about connecting, communicating, and understanding. However, during one of our conversations, I told her that I do sometimes feel like I didn't take time for myself to process the entire thing. She did not allow me that space. She made a comment that if I left, she would get the weapons back and that there is no life for me without you. She has been seeing a therapist and on medication for about 1.5 months now, but I need to figure out if this is control or if she legitimately needs help. I will bring this up during our next MC session. As for myself, we went on a vacation where I was allowed to take some personal me time. I've been focusing on work and professional activities and been getting more active physically, tons of exercise, as well around the house to keep the intrusive thoughts away. Sometimes I don't feel like doing much of anything, probably the depression stage of grief. I indulge in that feeling sometimes and sit in it, and other times I try to keep busy. I do wish she took a more active role in recovery/reconciliation. She has been researching books. She read not just Friends, but mostly she wants to spend her time with me. Part of me thinks she is worried that I will leave her, and part of me thinks that she is too reliant on me for her happiness. At the end of the day, I do not yet trust her. I do still love her, but at times I feel like putting in the effort to go on date nights is half-hearted on my side. Maybe I'm not entirely invested because I'm still processing this on my end and feel like the relationship is still not yet safe/secure, but I'm giving it my best shot. Maybe it's my actions not being in sync with my emotions of being betrayed/lied to. I take ownership of the things I have done that contributed to the marriage not being so great, and I'm hopeful that whatever direction we ultimately go, I will either be a better partner for my wife or be better at being a partner to someone else if I walk away. I know it won't be because I didn't try. One interesting note. She mentioned that she did not approve or think me posting on Reddit was a healthy way to tackle this. There could be some truth to that as well, but I know I've gotten a lot of support here. Update 5. It's okay for now. We did couples therapy for about 10 sessions, but it got to the point where it was stabilizing the marriage. We had to go through about 2 to 3 counselors to get a good one that actually understood the impact of the infidelity instead of pushing the blame back on me for the infidelity and trying to fix me. We go out on dates. I have full access to her location/phone data. She doesn't blame me anymore for what happened, but instead says how sorry she is. I am proud of her for going through therapy individually. She discovered through therapy that her mother is a narcissist. Through that, she was able to identify that her need of constant validation and fear of not being validated came from other people constantly trying to please others and effectively making others responsible for her happiness. When I wasn't making her happy, she decided to try to get this validation from others. That's my theory for now. This is impossible for anyone to fulfill. Nobody can be responsible for others' happiness. I'm proud of her for reading the book/doing the work to identify some issues that were programmed from her childhood. It's hard to take a critical look at yourself and those closest to you and identify how their behavior can hurt. I still have this lingering feeling of mistrust. I haven't fully recovered from this. I'm trying is all I can say. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Husband wanted his mom to move in with us for 2 years without asking me. And when I said no, she started sending quotes about parent rights, then called me whitewashed. Hello, everyone. My husband and I have been married for almost 2 years, and our son is 10 months old. We live in Canada. I grew up here while my husband immigrated when he was a student. My parents live nearby, which has been invaluable during my pregnancy and since. My mom comes over regularly to help us out. My husband and her are on good terms too, so it's been going well. His parents live in another country. We have visited them once since we got married. That was 7 months ago. The time prior to that was our wedding itself, which took place there. My husband had been talking about my ML visiting soon for a long visit, which I was happy with. We recently moved into our new house. I've done a good job decorating it. We have a large guest room, and I was looking forward to hosting her, especially since it would make my husband happy. A couple of days ago, he was complaining about how detailed her visa application was. I told him I was surprised it was so thorough. He told me that it's because while regular visa forms allow a stay of 6 months max, this one allows 2 years. I asked why would she need a stay of more than 6 months. He said that she had been thinking of winding up her medical practice and basically retiring, and this would then allow her to stay for a longer visit if we all decide that it works. I was stunned. I told him he should just do the regular app because his mom won't be staying for anywhere close to 6 months. I had it in my mind that she'd be staying for like a month. That's how long we stayed for when we went there. He said that's his mom. She tells him how alone she feels. She can't go to my BILs because he lives with roommates, and we can't just put a timer on her visit here. He said she's been looking forward to helping us out with our son. I told him we don't need help. We manage fine on our own and with my mom's help. I wanted to host his mom as a guest, not as a part of our household. He complained that how was it fair that my parents could visit whenever they wanted while his can't. I was hurt by that because my parents have helped us out a lot, and I asked him if he wants us to limit how often my mom comes to visit. He said no, that's not what he meant, that he likes her, but it wasn't fair to his parents. My reply was that when my mom comes, she goes at the end of the day. That wouldn't be the case with his. I ended it by saying he should look into the easier regular form because she can't be thinking of staying for that long. He chose to sleep on the couch that night and has been cold with me since. I hate that. We've never been cold to each other like this. I talked to my mom too. She said that having his mom live with us for long stretches would definitely affect me. That this is worth fighting for. I haven't seen him working on the application since last night. He went out when his mom called. When he came back, I asked him how she took it. He told me he had told her he's looking into what application best suits her. He asked me if I'd changed my mind. I said no. He just shook his head and started watching TV. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1, NTA. Was he planning to move his mother in your home for 2 years, going on forever, without even having a conversation about it? OP. He said that he was doing the 2-year application just so we have options once she's here and said it'll be a collective decision. I told him there's no need. I have my decision already. I will not be okay with anything more than a couple of months. Even that's pushing it in my mind, let alone more than 6 months. That's actually where I thought I may have been the AH. He was talking about options and I kind of just shut him down. Comment 2. NTA. It sounds like they planned on her fully just moving in with you. It's likely that after she was there and established, that she simply would not leave. This is definitely a hill to die on. You will end up with her living with you indefinitely if you don't put a time limit on it. 1 month is quite reasonable. Tell your husband that if she would like to live closer to you guys, you can help her find affordable housing, and then she could be equally as involved as your parents are. It would mess up your family dynamics as well as your marriage. And I doubt that your parenting styles will be the same. Her moving in for more than a month will be the death of your marriage. Opie. A lot of comments have said that we can help her get an apartment. I don't think that's a good idea. There's going to be a language barrier. She won't be able to drive. There's a lot of reasons that won't work. I am very sure that if we go down that route, she will end up being a guest in our house very soon after. Update 1, March 11th, 2025. Thank you for the feedback in the original post. Yesterday when he came back from work, I tried to start the conversation again. He had been giving me the cold shoulder since all this started. I told him I'm his wife of 2 years and the mother of his child. This isn't how we're going to communicate. We started talking after that. I held my ground that his mom staying with us for so long wasn't tenable. If she wanted to visit Canada for longer than a couple of months, she would have to live in her own apartment, learn how to drive, or use public transport. She's used to being driven by a hired driver in Pakistan, and a whole bunch of other changes that she'd need to get used to. That I don't see myself changing my mind on this. So, he needs to be honest with her and himself and not go down the we'll keep our options open route. He said that he knows her living with us for an extended stay would require some changes on our part. But he was asking me to do this as a favor to him, that I claim to love him and yet can't do him this favor for his mom. I actually started sobbing when he said this. It was so hurtful that he was using this as a litmus test for our love. I said her being around for years would ruin our parenthood with our first child. That I want us to raise our child the way we see fit, not his mom. Also, all the intimate moments we have, our sex life, everything would suffer. My parents are Pakistani too. I know this will happen. He again asked me to just not shut the door completely, that he'll tell his mom the stay can only be for a month or so, and I can let him know if I think the change wasn't too much. And we landed on a compromise that for now they'll do the regular visa app that only allows a max stay of 6 months. If I changed my mind, he'll do the super visa. He then had a long call with his mom, which his older sister also joined. It actually lasted an hour and a half. He was in the backyard for the call and came back in to grab a chair. It was that long. Also, from what I could see, he was mostly listening for that convo. When he came back in, he told me to just not answer any calls or messages from his mom or sister. Meanwhile, I've received like 4 missed calls and 20 messages from them, mostly Islamic quotes about the rights of parents. I've told them that I can't talk right now since I'm busy with my son right now. I asked him how it went. He said as well as he expected. But he's not giving me the cold shoulder anymore. I do feel guilty because, like I said, I was actually looking forward to host her for a month. And I think this whole thing may have caused irreparable damage not just to my relationship with my MIL and SIL, but my husband's relationship with his mom and sister. I've told my MIL I'll call her back in a couple of hours once my husband's back. I'm dreading that conversation, but I know what my boundaries are. Thank you for the feedback. It helped. Edit. Also, one thing that I had to clarify a few times last post. A lot of people were like, this is what happens when you marry outside your culture. My husband and I are both of Pakistani descent. Just that I was born here while he immigrated here as a student, but he's been here for like a decade now, too. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. She is not your son's parent and has 0 rights to him. OP. I think those Islamic quotes were about their rights as parents to my husband, and by extension mine, hospitality and care, which I get it, but I don't know if this is how those principles were supposed to be applied. Definitely not going to get into a religious debate with her. Comment 2. Good for you, OP. Do not go on that call with your MIL by yourself. Your husband must be on that call, and he better not cave to what she wants. OP. Oh, I was just going to stick with the 1-month-ish plan in the call. Why do you think I shouldn't talk to her alone? Just asking because I was considering getting this all done with before he comes home. Comment 2. I agree to stick with the 1-month plan, but it doesn't sound like she's happy with you. I think it's best to have your husband on the call. So, A, he knows everything she says to you. B, so it doesn't seem like you're the bad guy refusing to let her stay indefinitely and that your husband is also on board with it. And C, so he can do the work of holding the line with his mother and show that he is able to stick up for you. Maybe it'll be fine, but I can just picture MIL saying nasty things to you and then telling your husband she didn't say them and that you're overreacting. It's his side of the family, and it should be his job to mediate. Opie. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait and do this with him. Thank you for the advice. Update 2, March 12, 2025. This is just for those people who had given me a lot of great advice on holding the line and had asked for an update to my phone call with my MIL. I spoke to my MIL. Since her missed calls and text messages were asking me to call her, I figured I should be the one to call, not my husband. But I put my phone on speaker so that my husband, who was lying on the couch, could also hear it. She said that my husband had told her he thought it'd be best if she restricts her trip to 1 month since it was her first time in Canada, and because we were really busy with my son. She said that ever since my husband had gone to Canada as an 18-year-old, he'd always wanted her to visit for a long duration, and now all of a sudden, he was asking her to restrict it when she wanted to help with her grandson, and said she knew I must be the reason why. I said it was a joint decision because of the circumstances, but she wouldn't hear of it. She said if her visiting for more than a month was so outrageous to us, then that's fine and she'll limit her stay. But I should know that in Pakistan, in-laws live in the same house with the married couple like my SIL does, and that she had thought I was in touch with my Islamic and Pakistani roots when I was getting married because that's what my husband had told her. But she was disappointed at how whitewashed I was. At this point, my husband asked me to give him the phone, but not before I told her that I was totally comfortable with how in tune with my heritage I was, and that apparently so was her son. Told her my husband had just come and handed him the phone. My husband went in the yard to talk, but I was so angry I decided to eavesdrop. He was talking to both my MIL and FIL. He told them that he hadn't fled to Canada in the middle of the night as a student. They both had seen him off at the airport, and that when he had introduced me, hadn't kept the fact that I was born and raised in Canada a secret either, that they can't expect to treat us like a couple in Pakistan. Then he listened a whole lot for like half an hour. I gave him a chair again and kept telling them that it's different now. They ended the call with him saying that we were both really looking forward to her visit, that we'll make sure it's a great 30 or so days with us and her grandson. He apologized to me on behalf of his mom and asked me to please let her lecture go and still be on board with a 1-month plan. I'm looking forward to it much less than I was, but I said fine. Thanks a lot again for the advice. Along with my mother, I was able to get good advice from here, too. And I think I've managed to resolve this issue. I know myself. I know my MIL staying over for years wasn't something I could deal with, and knowing a lot of people agreed was really helpful. Update 3, April 3, 2025. After I had updated here last time, I was fully committed to graciously hosting my MIL for 31 days and not a day more. Since then, we had one unpleasant exchange on Eid a few days ago. I had posted about it on the subreddit regarding MIL issues. This is what I had posted. My MIL is going to be visiting near the end of April for a month. For context, we live in Canada. I was born here. My husband immigrated a decade ago. We got married 2 years ago and our son is 10 months old. My in-laws live in Pakistan. My parents moved to Canada from Pakistan a year before I was born. My MIL had initially planned on staying longer, but I had put my foot down and told my husband I couldn't deal with someone living with us for longer than a month. So, she's had to cut short her plan and didn't take that well. I had actually posted about this somewhere else previously and had been told to take a look at this subreddit. I had made my peace with the 1-month stay and was fully planning on being cordial during it. Yesterday we had celebrated Eid at my parents' house. It was our first Eid with our son, and we were all happy about getting to dress him in his cute little traditional Kurdish shalwar. I sent her some pictures of the event because she always asks us to send her pictures. Her reply was not what I expected. She started lamenting how far we were from them and said that this is the problem with marrying someone not from Pakistan, that the parents suffer as a result. How unfair it is that my parents get her son and grandson to themselves. My heart literally shrank reading it. I knew she missed us, but to hear her say she essentially regrets our marriage was so hurtful. I just left her on read. I showed it to my husband. He sincerely apologized and thanked me for not responding to her. I have to host her for a month. How am I supposed to do that now? I would have normally asked my mom for advice on this stuff since she's more well acquainted with dealing with someone from Pakistan, but I actually feel she'll lose it at my MIL when she visits if I share this with her. I just wanted some advice and partly wanted to vent. I'm trying to compartmentalize this because we're still celebrating Eid today with some friends and I don't want this to bring me down. Any advice would be appreciated. Today's update. Today, my husband told me that her visa application had been rejected. They're applying for the notes regarding the decision, but according to him, it's futile, that it was always a 50-50 shot. That the most common reason for rejections is having insufficient ties back home, which makes them think the applicant won't go back. That he had thought having my FIL remain there would have fixed that, but apparently not. I'm NGL. It's like a huge weight has been lifted off me. I'm trying to act disappointed, but I was dreading her visit. He said she was inconsolable when he spoke to her earlier, that she had asked him to look into us moving to Pakistan. I love Pakistan, but never going to happen. When he shut that down, she gave him his uncle's number who lives in the UAE for job leads so we could move to the UAE. Again, I'm sure it's a great place, but no, so that we could be a 2-hour flight away from them and have our family grow in an Islamic environment. He told her it's going to be difficult, but agreed to talk to him. I was a bit angry about this. I told him there's no way we're moving to the UAE. He said, "Of course we're not. We've built a life here. He has a great career here, but he didn't want to completely shut down his mom." I personally disagree with that. I think she deserves the truth, but whatever. I'm going to talk to her to commiserate tomorrow. It's too late in Pakistan now. Because again, while I was no longer looking forward to hosting her, I was fully committed to doing so. Unfortunately, this does mean that most of our family vacations will have to be in Pakistan now since they can't visit us here. We already need to go there in December because they're planning to have his brother's wedding done then. Thank you to everyone who gave me advice here. It sucks that we have all this bad blood now for no reason. Like, I'm sure she hates me now. And while I've tried very hard to forget what she said about my upbringing and heritage, I can't. And I see her in a whole new light now. I'm going to be comforting to my husband about this, but maybe it was for the best. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. This must be so difficult for you. As you said, your MIL has bred bad animosity unnecessarily, but I think a possible band-aid could be a 2 to 3 week vacation once per year or so to Pakistan so she can meet her grandson. You could possibly sync your visit with a minor Islamic holiday so she can experience a holiday with him physically there. Just a compromise. Update me. Opie. Yeah, that's going to be the plan now. A couple of weeks vacation in Pakistan is great, but I'm just concerned my husband would want all our vacations to be there now. Like I want us to have vacations, just our family, somewhere else too. But that's for later. At least this problem is sorted. I'm so relieved. Comment 2. Instead of every vacation being in Pakistan, consider planning some holidays to meet ILS in some other location to which they can travel. Opie. That's such a great idea. I'll bring it up for sure when the time comes. Thank you. Opie clarifies on her family's passports and citizenships. Opie. My son and I are only Canadians. My husband is a dual citizen, and I'm going to have my son's documents with me at all times and the Canadian consulate's number saved. I hate thinking about it, but I'm not taking any risks when it comes to him. Update 4, April 4th, 2025. Our phone call went well for like the first 2 minutes when I expressed how sorry I was that she wouldn't be able to come and the visa officers should have been more considerate. It went downhill soon after. She said that this probably means she'll never be able to visit Canada and a few weeks a year isn't enough, that my parents have gotten to be close to us for 2 years now. It should be their right, and asked if my husband called his uncle about a job in the UAE since he wasn't answering her texts. I said, I don't know, but it won't work anyway. We live in Canada. We've started a family here. We have a support system here. My husband has a great career here, but we will definitely have as many vacations together as possible so she could spend time with my son. She then went on about how my SIL, her daughter, has been living with her in-laws since she got married, how bad her MIL is, how lucky I was to have such loving in-laws who just want to be close to us, and I should be more grateful. I told her I'm grateful for my son, my husband, and for everything we have. Told her I needed to go and ended the call before I said anything more to her while she's still down in the dumps about the visa. I texted my husband this immediately before she gets to him. He's probably not going to be happy since he wanted us to let her be comforted by the UAE idea. But no more. She needs to be told that we're never moving. I'm only going to call her on important occasions now, like Eid, and to send pictures if my husband asks. But that's it. A sincere thank you to the visa officer who made the decision. Sorry for the repeated updates, NGL. This may have been meant to be a rant, too. She's just so rude now all the time. So unreasonable. Also based on a comment that my son may automatically be a Pakistani citizen after all. I called the Pakistani consulate, and when I explained the situation, the lady there said my son is technically a Pakistani citizen. Then I asked about myself because it hit me that my situation when I was born would have been similar to my son's. She said I was a citizen too. I'm going to be looking into how this could affect our visit before we attend my BIL's wedding in December in Pakistan. Thanks again. I won't be posting anymore. This issue is done as far as I'm concerned. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Kicked my friend out after she kicked my dog and refused to clean up. Now she lost her job for assaulting her boss and got arrested for destroying our other friend's property. As the title says, Last week I kicked what I thought was a good friend out of my house because I can no longer handle her antics. Just want to write it here just to de-stress and deal with the grief of losing a friend. This is probably going to be really long, so sorry in advance. Kendall and I met in university back in 2016. We studied different majors but were from the same department, so we shared many classes together and bonded over our passion for gaming and memes. We hit it off right away and became pretty close throughout our college years. We'd hang out between classes, pull all-nighters for assignments, and even did some group projects together when we could. She was cool to be around, and we had a lot of fun. Upon graduation, Kendall moved back to her hometown due to co and found a job there. We kept in touch online through Instagram. We'd comment on each other's posts and occasionally have video calls to catch up. She seemed to be doing okay, though she'd sometimes complain about living with her parents again after having the freedom of college life. About 3 years later, Kendall messaged me out of the blue saying she found a better paying job in the city I live in, so she was planning to move out from her parents' place. When I asked her about her plans for accommodations, she replied with, "That's the thing. I was going to ask if you have an extra bedroom that I could move into." For context, I inherited an apartment from my late grandfather, which is a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath near the city center a while back, and I currently live alone there since it is closer to my workplace, and it has all the convenience of public transport. It's a really nice place, and I feel lucky to have it, especially in this economy. After some thinking, I figured there was no harm in living with Kendall since I considered us as close friends. We discussed the terms and OFC, the rent, which I set pretty low compared to market rate since she was my friend. The agreement was that she'd pay her share of utilities and groceries, clean up after herself, and find her own parking since my apartment only came with one spot. A week later, Kendall moved into my apartment. It was great at first. My home felt more lively than usual, and the thought of going home to a close friend warmed my heart and gave me a sense of security. We'd watch movies together, order takeout, and talk about our day. It reminded me of our college days, and I was happy to have that friendship back in my life. Things were okay for a while and then went downhill super quick. Kendall started complaining about many things at home, about her work, her savings, and how she feels homesick. At first, I was very accommodating, thinking maybe she just needs time to get used to the city life. I offered as much help as I can, even to the point of telling her if she's low on money, I wouldn't mind voiding a month's rent if it meant I could help her to achieve financial stability. There was this one time she came home almost in tears because her boss had criticized her work. I spent the whole evening consoling her and even ordered her favorite food to cheer her up. Another time she mentioned she was short on rent and I told her she could pay me later when she was more stable. I was really trying to be a good friend. I taught her how I save money, how I live off with my then low salary with several commitments like my car, my dog, and a student loan. I grew up where my parents expect me to be independent. So, I told her things I do when I'm low on cash, how to get freelance jobs, etc. But she always seemed to have excuses for every suggestion I have. Finding a freelance job is too hard, or how she couldn't let go of her premium junk food, that she isn't willing to cook or meal prep, and I eventually decided to leave it as it is. Then, after 2 months of living together, I realized Kendall started treating me as some kind of competition. She would constantly ask me things like, how much money I make a month? How many job hopping did that take? Anything that she thinks she's better than me at, she'll definitely pop that question. She boasts about how she is loyal to her paying company and how I would never be able to move up the corporate ladder, as she called me an industry frog. This one time we were talking about our jobs and I mentioned I was thinking about applying somewhere else for better opportunities. She laughed and said, "You'll never stick around long enough to get promoted. Companies hate job hoppers like you." I tried to explain that job hopping is actually common these days to increase your salary, but she just kept going on about loyalty being more important. She once snooped my savings balance and asked how TF did I have so much saved up with commitments, etc. Mind you, she didn't have a lot of commitments since her parents paid off her student loans and fully paid off a brand new car for her, and maybe I should stop collecting rent from her. I got mad and told her if she isn't happy living with me, maybe she should move out. Cue crocodile tears, as she said it was a joke, I didn't have to take her seriously. She begged for forgiveness and promised to never snoop my personal items and details again. I let it go once, but she kept bringing things up like, "Well, You have the cash and a credit card. Every time I told her I'd rather stay home because I no longer have the budget to go out and have fun. Comments like these became more frequent when I got a new job a while back. She'd make these little digs constantly like, if I order delivery, she'd say, must be nice to have all that disposable income. Or, if I bought myself something nice. She'd make comments about how I was showing off. Then there was this awkward phase where she started acting strange around my boyfriend. Whenever he'd come over, she'd suddenly dress differently and act all flirty with him. She'd laugh super loud at all his jokes and find excuses to touch his arm or sit closer to him than necessary. Once when I went to the kitchen to get drinks, I came back to find her basically leaning against him on the couch. My boyfriend later told me he felt really uncomfortable, but didn't want to make a scene. On top of that, she doesn't clean up after herself. I'd come home to dirty dishes piled in the sink, her clothes thrown around the living room and food wrappers left on the coffee table. When I'd ask her to clean up, she'd say she was too tired or she'd do it later, but later never came. I started cleaning up after her just to keep the peace, which I realized now was a mistake. She also started parking in my parking space without asking. Our initial agreement was that she had to find her own parking space if she's moving in with her own car because my apartment only has one parking lot per unit. But multiple times I'd come home and find her car in my spot, forcing me to park blocks away and walk home. When I confronted her, she'd say things like, I was only going to be a minute, or, I didn't think you'd be home so early. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I caught her kicking my dog in his abdomen when I got home from work. I had come home early that day and walked in to see her literally kicking my poor dog, who wasn't doing anything but lying in his bed. I yelled at her and rushed to check my dog. Luckily, he was fine, but I still rushed him to the vet for safety measures. I got home and she sneered that it was just a dog and as a friend I shouldn't treat her like that. I asked why she'd kicked my dog and she didn't answer me. She shrugged and tried to escape into her room. At this point, it was already about a year since Kendall moved in with me. I lost my cool and told her off, bringing up all her problems and how I tried to be nice and accommodating. Then I told her I'm giving her a week to move out and that from then on rather we keep our relationship casual or we don't ever talk at all. Kendall cried and begged me to not kick her out, but soon it turned into her screaming back at me, calling me a bad friend because apparently in her words, I didn't tell her off on how badly she was behaving, like WTF. There was a lot of back and forth, which I don't remember what I said, but I remember eventually calling her an entitled brat. She cried again, saying it was uncalled for and stormed off to her room. The next day, I was bombarded with texts from other uni friends, some calling me selfish and others sympathized with me. Apparently, Kendall posted our argument on Facebook and Instagram, painting me to be the bad guy. She wrote this long post about how I suddenly turned on her and threw her out on the street for no reason. She conveniently left out all the crap she'd pulled and made it sound like I was just being cruel. I was upset at first, but I decided that after Kendall moved out, we would no longer be friends, as well as those who took her side of the story and condemned me without hearing my side. I didn't bother posting my own version online because honestly, I was just too exhausted by the whole thing. Last week, Kendall finally left and I have changed the locks on my apartment. I am definitely still grieving about this loss of a friend as I've had many good times with Kendall. For now, I want to focus on myself and hopefully I eventually get over this. My dog seems happier too, which is a good sign, I guess. Aita for kicking her out. Maybe I should have been more patient or set better boundaries earlier on. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. Edit. The whole teasing that I have more money than Kendall gotten worse when I told her I was given an offer by an MNC as a senior designer and I disclosed her the offered salary. As we always did, like I know how much she earns too, which was about 50% more than hers. That was dumb on my part. I now understand why my parents told me to never disclose/discuss salaries the moment I started working. After I told her about the new job, she stopped talking to me for like 3 days, then suddenly started making these passive-aggressive comments about how some people get lucky while others have to actually work hard. I tried to ignore it, but it just got worse over time. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the comments and support. It really means a lot. Some of you are asking about my dog. He's fine. The vet said there was no injury. Thank goodness. Hello everyone. I'm here with some updates about me and my doggo, as well as my now ex-friend, Kendall. Let's start off with the update about myself. I've been doing well, and surprisingly, as some of you mentioned previously, I had gotten over the loss of this friendship rather quickly. My boyfriend planned a trip to a pet-friendly beachfront hotel, and I spent a few days with just my boyfriend and doggo. We played in the seawater and I watched my dog played in the sand. Overall, had a great time, and we even had grilled fish together while watching the sunset. Doggo had a deboned fish fillet. It was nice to get away for a bit and clear my head. Being at home was starting to feel weird after everything that happened, and the change of scenery helped a lot. My boyfriend has been really supportive through all this, which I'm grateful for. I am also grateful for my friends who stood by my side regarding this issue. They check in on me from time to time and sent me funny content to watch during my free time. Some of them even told me their stories about Kendall and their discontentment with her behavior, which I will list some below. Friend A. Kendall ridiculed Friend A several times because Friend A earned less than Kendall despite he has worked a year longer than Kendall. Friend B. Kendall trash-talked Friend B's company via Instagram just because Kendall flunked her interview with said company with flying colors. Friend C. Kendall always demands Friend C to be her personal driver during our college days. If Friend C refuses, Kendall will guilt trip her. Friend D. Ruined Friend D's assignment by pranking him. She actually formatted his laptop when the project was due in 2 weeks. When confronted, all Kendall said was oopsies. There are many more, but these are the more icky ones I've heard from my friends. Honestly, hearing all these stories made me realize that Kendall has always been problematic. I just never noticed it because she hadn't directed her behavior toward me until we lived together. It's like they say, you never really know someone until you live with them. And now, with that out of the way, here is today's main course. After I kicked Kendall out of my house, one of my uni friends, let's call her and, stood by Kendall's version of events and has allowed Kendall to move in with her instead, and was one of the people who texted me saying I was being cruel and that friends should support each other no matter what. She basically lectured me about how I should have been more understanding of Kendall's situation. Well, guess what happened? And called me out of the blue this afternoon, and her first question to me was, "How on earth did you manage to put up with Kendall for a year? She's driving me crazy." Long story short, whatever Kendall did when she's living with me, she now does it too, and snooping in personal items, leaving dirty laundry around, generally being a prick in the butt, and told me she's planning to force Kendall out of her house, too. I didn't comment much since and were among those who called me a cruel person. But now it has came back to bite her. I just listened and tried not to say, "I told you so" too many times. But wait, that's not all. According to and Kendall lost her job because she tried to ask for a 100% increment and assaulted her supervisor when the increment request was turned down 2 weeks ago. She was immediately escorted out of the office building by security, and she just texted me 20 minutes ago saying she needed a favor from me, that she wants a job at my workplace. I replied stating there isn't any vacancy. TBH. Even if there is, I wouldn't hire her. Like, can you imagine having to work with someone who kicked your dog? No thanks. So, yay. I hope this is the last time I will hear from Kendall, and I'll only update if somehow something interesting happened that involves Kendall. Thanks again for all the support. It really helped me get through this mess. Update 2. I can't believe I'm back with another update, but a lot has happened since my last post. Some of you asked for more details about what's been going on with Kendall. So here goes. Hello everyone. It's been about 2 months since I kicked my now ex-friend Kendall out of my home. For those who has read my story before, just want to let you guys know, Doggo and I are well fed and happy. He's been extra cuddly lately, almost like he knows I've been going through some stuff. Got him a new toy the other day and he's been carrying it everywhere. If you guys remember last time, and one of my friends who sided with Kendall told me about all the horrible things that has happened while having Kendall as a roommate. Oh boy, and had to call the cops to evict Kendall. I didn't think things would escalate that far, but apparently they did. I happened to meet and at a pet-friendly cafe to enjoy a good book yesterday while my doggo gets to enjoy playing at the doggy daycare-ish kind of area. I did wonder if it was intentional on her side since all my friends know I love this cafe in particular, and she greeted me and asked if she could sit and have a chat with me. We started out with some small talk, But the moment she brought up about her evicting Kendall, I just sat there and listened. I gave in a smile and prodded her lightly with a comment I borrowed from the previous comment on Reddit. "Oh, so you're going to really kick her out then?" I remember someone last told me it was cruel to kick a friend out of their homes, and stuttered for a while before saying how I should have made a post to counter/clarify Kendall's social media claims about me. I simply told her neither have I the energy to do so nor I have the need to, which in turn landed us in some brief, awkward silence before I asked what she needed from me. And told me she wanted someone to vent to about Kendall and didn't know who to turn to, and told me she filed a police report against Kendall for theft and destruction of property and needed the assistance of police officers to evict Kendall from her home. She is also in the midst of filing a restraining order as she mentioned Kendall looked completely psycho at that moment. Unlike me, and lives in landed property, so I guess she'd be a lot more worried about Kendall coming back to find her. Kendall apparently stole Anne's debit card and spent a whopping $2,000 in total and only found out about the missing money when she found her debit card missing from her wallet. She checked the bank statements only to find that $2,000 went to clothes, expensive meals, and clubbing activities. At this point, one might ask, how did it know it was Kendall that spent that money? Well, the answer presented itself when Kendall came home screaming at Anne for terminating her debit card. According to Anne, Kendall was shouting every insult in the book while flailing her arms around with Anne's debit card in hand, which Kendall proceeded with slamming the card on the table before storming off into her room. That was the first time Anne felt afraid of another person, much less a friend. Since then, Kendall made Anne's life hell on earth. Kendall would leech off Anne's groceries, judges her choice of snacks, body shames, and etc. Kendall also attempted to seduce Anne's boyfriend. She once kissed Anne's boyfriend, let's call him Jason, on the cheek and giggled before running straight for her room during movie night. In another instance, she groped Jason's manhood right in front of Anne, but later claimed that she was drunk and thought what she touched was a couch pillow. The worst thing that Kendall did was throwing herself onto Jason and saying she has a fever, and later guided Jason's hand to feel her breast and walked in at the same time Jason's hand was under Kendall's shirt. These incidents has since caused a strain between the three, and Jason felt awkward to the point where he told Anne he would stop visiting her house unless Kendall moves out, and cried for a bit when she reached this part and then told Kendall to move out and gave her a week to do so. Kendall then cried and ran out of the house only to come back later in the evening to lock herself in her room, and presumed that Kendall is packing her stuff, and she decided to ignore Kendall for the time being. The next morning Anne woke up to the sound of some grunts and broken ceramics. She rushed out to her yard to see an unhinged Kendall swinging a rod against everything she could hit: a tree, flower pots, even the grass on the ground. This led Anne to immediately lock her doors and call the police, fearing for her own safety. The police arrived and handled the situation swiftly, and they took Kendall away. There was still a lot of screaming and shouting, and Anne said she's not sure if Kendall is being locked up or has anyone who would have posted bail for her. While I guess it was kind of nice sipping tea about Kendall, but at how Anne described Kendall as behaving, I wonder if she'd actually needed professional help. I can't help but feel sad for her condition despite we have gone no contact for 2 months. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe I should have tried to get her help instead of just kicking her out. But then I remember how she treated my dog, and I realized there was nothing else I could have done. I don't know if there will be another update after this. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Fiancé suddenly said I wasn't his dream girl and left me. When I stalked his Instagram, I found out that he was dating a younger version of me, and now he suddenly wants me back. Hi guys. I know it's probably hard to believe given how nauseatingly pathetic I sound right now, but before this happened, I really felt like a confident and content human being. Almost all of my current friends are mutual friends with my ex-fiancé, so I don't want to embroil them in this drama or compel anyone to choose sides or feel uncomfortable. So, I guess I'm trying to turn to this community for solace and guidance because I've read a great deal of mature and grounded advice here. I hope this sounds somewhat coherent, as I've currently locked myself in a conference room and shut the blinds so no one can see me cry as I type this. I was with my ex-fiancé for 7 years. He is the only romantic partner I've ever truly loved. I was completely head over heels in love with him. Even now, after all this, I still feel that way about him. He is charming, goofy, kind, quick-witted, interesting, ambitious, and gorgeous. We got engaged 2 years ago, but we weren't in a rush to get married. About a year ago, we began to seriously contemplate trying for a baby. We had lived together happily for 6 years. We had done all the traveling and partying we wanted to in our 20s, and we were excited to start our family. Over the next 6 months, he was much busier than normal, but I didn't think anything was wrong. I did my best to alleviate any extra stress he had, though I was experiencing some extra pressure at work, too, by taking over all the housework and errands, helping him organize and pack for trips, and just being understanding when he would work very late or need to leave for a week or two. We didn't spend as much time together during that period, and I missed him a lot, but I thought we were still happy. When the 6 months were over, our schedules reverted back to normal. I felt relieved until I started to notice him becoming more distant, despite the fact that we finally had more time together. He started going on his phone more frequently when we were together and seemed to be more protective of his phone. I'm not generally a jealous person, and I trusted him completely, so I didn't think much of it. Then, one day, after another month had passed, I brought up the topic of trying for a baby. As we discussed, I could immediately tell something was wrong. He was quiet for a while, and then he unleashed a flood. He said he was unhappy with our relationship and had been for some time. He said that he cared about me deeply, but that the spark in our relationship had died, and that he tried to convince himself he could live without that spark, but had ultimately decided that he couldn't. He said I had done nothing wrong and, in fact, was the perfect partner. But that didn't change the fact that he couldn't shake this nagging feeling that I wasn't the one for him. He said that he didn't want to hurt me, but that he couldn't condemn himself to a lifetime of settling for someone that wasn't his dream girl, even though he didn't know if his dream girl existed. He said he was sorry, but he couldn't live a lie anymore. I don't think I said a single word as he was telling me all this because I just felt so utterly shocked and blindsided. I just stood there, staring and listening and crying silently. When he finished, all I could utter was something like, "Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Do you still love me?" He paused for a while and then said that he loved me, but wasn't in love with me anymore. We proceeded to spend the whole night discussing his feelings and our relationship until we were both so exhausted we couldn't cry anymore and the sun was coming up. He said he was sorry again and it was probably best if he stayed at a friend's place. So he packed up some stuff and left. That was about 5 months ago. We never really talked in person again. His brother and his best friend came over the weekend to get the rest of his stuff, and I just left while they were packing because I couldn't stand to be there. I felt so shocked and numb and traumatized and tired that I didn't even cry much. I couldn't really process what was happening as I went through the motions of moving out and explaining the situation to my family. When I finally moved into my new place and sat alone with my boxes, I completely broke down. I could not stop crying and dry heaving. I ended up using 5 vacation days to take off a week of work, which really irked my manager. I could not get out of bed. I barely ate, living off this old tub of peanut butter. I looked through all our old pictures and tried to figure out where it all went wrong. Then, for 4 months, I tried my best to move on. I deleted all my social media apps so I wouldn't have to see him. I dove into work. I ramped up my hobbies. I exercised to keep my mind occupied. I met with friends and family and pretended everything was okay. I started going to my therapist again, which helped a bit. I finally thought I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Then, a month ago, I ran into a mutual friend from college. She said it was really sad to see we weren't together anymore and surprising to see he'd moved on so fast. I told her I wasn't keeping up with him anymore but that I was doing okay. When I got home, even though I knew it was a terrible idea, I re-downloaded Instagram and went to his profile. His latest picture was him at his cousin's wedding with his arm around a gorgeous girl. All the old pictures of him and I were gone from his profile. Again, I knew it was a terrible, self-destructive idea, but I went to the girl's profile and Googled her. She is literally a younger, smarter, prettier, and better version of myself. We both studied at the same university, but she completed a prestigious program which I was rejected from. We both have green eyes and brown hair, but she is far prettier and legitimately looks like a model. We are both thin and fit, but she has an amazing hourglass figure and looks far more stylish than me and has tens of thousands of followers, even though she's not an influencer or whatnot. In fact, we both work at the same company. I'm pretty sure my ex met her through work, but she landed a job in a prestigious division right out of undergrad and likely makes more money than me. She is an improved version of me, 7 years younger, and the love of my life is dating her. For the past month, I've been spiraling. I can't stop stalking my ex-fiancée and this girl. I look at her Instagram every day and torture myself with her gorgeous pictures. She's posted a dozen pictures with my ex over the past few months, and he looks so happy, healthy, and fit. They've gone on trips together. He's brought her to his hometown, and he's even posted a picture of them with a mushy caption, which he never did when we were together. I have no evidence, and I don't think my ex would do this, but I now suspect he was at least interested in her while we were still together. She started at the company about a year ago. I'm so paranoid of running into them. I can recognize that my behavior is obsessive and masochistic, and I've deleted Instagram and told myself I'm not going to do this anymore, only to wake up the next day and re-download the app and do it again. My therapist has been trying to help, but I just cannot move past this. I'm stuck in this mental loop of self-loathing and self-pity, this crazy mix of extreme sadness and latent anger. I feel so incredibly low, worthless, used up, discarded, and suddenly so incredibly old. I know that comparison is the thief of joy. I know that I am objectively still young enough to move on. I know that social media is a highlight reel and their relationship may not be perfect. I know that this girl has done nothing wrong to me. I know that my ex deserves to find his dream girl. But none of this knowledge helps soften the fact that I thought that by this time this year, I would be pregnant with the love of my life, and instead, I'm alone and he's found someone better. Please, if you've ever experienced something similar, share your words of wisdom or commiserate with me. I don't know, I just feel so worthless and alone. Update. Hi again, guys. It's been about 3 months since I posted about my struggle to move past my 7-year relationship with my ex-fiancée. While I cringe when I think about the pathetic state I was in when I wrote that post, sobbing alone in that conference room, I was stunned by the empathetic, mature, and helpful advice I received from members of this subreddit. These past few months have been an absolute roller coaster, and I thought I owed this subreddit an update given how much solace and guidance you guys gave me during some of my darkest days. I don't think things would have worked out nearly as well if I had continued to bottle up those festering emotions and isolate myself. So I'm grateful for every single person who commented and messaged me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, here's what happened. The night I made that post, I finally blocked my ex-fiancé and his girlfriend on Instagram, as many of you suggested. I think actually verbalizing how obsessive and masochistic my behavior was instead of keeping it all inside, and finally feeling validated in my emotional reactions after reading your sympathetic comments instead of feeling alone and crazy, clicked something in my brain. I resolved to break out of that self-destructive loop, to stop torturing myself with their perfect pictures and reclaim a modicum of self-respect. It was an incredible relief to not be constantly following the impulse to view their new pictures and give myself some time to heal instead of picking at that scab every single day. That weekend, I decided to reconnect with my family and friends and stop pretending that I was handling the breakup flawlessly. They were incredibly compassionate, though also shocked that I had been hiding my dark feelings so well, and it was like I'd instantly rebuilt my support network. I didn't realize how emotionally isolated I had become until I was able to be honest and open with people in my life. I did continue to avoid talking to friends who were mutual friends with my ex because I didn't want to put anyone in an awkward position, but I was able to reconnect with a few of my other friends, and I took the initiative to finally make some fun plans. Getting out of the house to enjoy brunches, hikes, and shows with my friends over the past few months has been incredibly beneficial for my mental health. Just being in new environments and focusing on people other than my ex was therapeutic, even for someone who tends towards introversion like myself. Per your suggestions, I also decided to try out another therapist. I did find my original therapist somewhat helpful, but I also felt like he was not able to relate to some of the nuances in my issues given that he was in his late 50s, so we had a bit of a generational gap. My new therapist is incredibly compatible with me and instantly understood the intricacies of my problems. She has helped considerably with addressing the roots of my insecurities and was able to validate and analyze my feelings in a much more intimate way. If you are struggling to find therapy useful, I highly recommend shopping around a bit for a more compatible therapist. Therapy is certainly not one size fits all. Another popular suggestion from you guys was finding a job at another company, away from my ex-fiancé and his girlfriend. I didn't think it would be possible since the job market in my field is not great at the moment, but I began actively searching for other positions. I brushed up my resume, filled out a couple applications, and even surprisingly secured an interview. Then, out of the blue, someone above me in my division quit to join a competitor. The senior managers were quite eager to fill his role quickly, so they decided to go with an internal hire, and after 5 or 6 rounds of interviews, God, I absolutely dread interviews, I got the job. I'm so grateful for this promotion. Not only is the salary substantially better, but the hours are actually more consistent as well. It's crazy. I feel like the momentum of my life has shifted so quickly, and I finally have an office. It's tiny, but I really enjoy it. The only downside was this promotion also meant I would have to continue working in the same building, albeit a very large building, as my ex. And as I left work before Christmas, the moment I've been dreading came. I ran into my ex as I was leaving the office. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and he complimented my new haircut. I thanked him, wished him well, and said I had to hurry to catch the next train. I wish I could say I felt cool and collected, but I was so nervous to see him again for the first time in like 6 months that I was almost shaking. On the commute home, I calmed down and actually thought, hey, that wasn't so bad. He looked good, but I didn't feel a rush of sadness or desire or anything. I mostly just felt awkward, like we'd become strangers again. I didn't feel that familiar impulse to stalk his Instagram and actually felt happy to see he was doing okay since I'd cared for him for so many years. I felt like at last I was really moving forward. The next day, I woke up to a dozen messages from my ex-fiancé. They started at around 2 a.m. and were slightly incoherent in part, so I'm guessing he was a bit drunk when he sent them. They were all long walls of text, which surprised me because he's not typically big on verbalizing his emotions. He wrote that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about me since we ran into each other outside the office, that he was sad that we weren't friends anymore because I still felt like his best friend, and that he regretted how everything went down. He said he questioned if he'd made a huge mistake in a moment of weakness and fucked his whole life up, and that he couldn't help but regret it all when he saw me. He apparently noticed that I'd blocked him on Instagram, which I found funny given how intensely I'd been stalking his Instagram, and said that made him really sad. I gathered from his messages that he'd likely broken up with the woman I'd seen on his Instagram because he said that he felt like he had been searching for some ideal woman who doesn't exist, and that he wanted to reignite our spark after failing to find that same spark with other people. I'm not gonna lie, it was shocking to read his texts and I was trembling and struggling to process a lot of it at first. Part of me wanted impulsively to give him another chance, but after taking a day to mull over his words, I ended up feeling like he was less sorry that he'd lost our relationship and more sorry that the greener pastures he sought weren't quite as green as he'd imagined. I tried to respond kindly but firmly, saying that I really treasured and appreciated our relationship, but that I felt like I could no longer trust him to the same degree I once did, and that I felt like it would be confusing and painful for us to become friends in the near future. I told him how hurt I felt when he blindsided me after promising that nothing was wrong, and how I struggled for a long time to figure out what was missing in our relationship, but ultimately felt that as long as he thought the missing part was so crucial that he wanted to leave after all those years together, then we probably aren't meant to be together. I wished him the best. He didn't respond to my messages. I was a bit shaken by the whole thing, but I proceeded to enjoy my holiday break with my family and even elected to go to my friend's New Year's Eve party, which I was considering skipping. Well, I'm super glad I didn't skip the party because I ended up meeting a wonderful man there. He's funny, intelligent, cute, interesting, compassionate, and is eager to settle down and have kids after also somewhat recently exiting a long-term relationship. We've gone on 3 dates so far, and at the risk of sounding too enthusiastic, they've been the best dates of my life. We want to take it slow since we were both in long-term relationships a year ago, but we've been stunned by how compatible our personalities and interests and goals are, and frankly, we're also both quite keen to start a family as soon as possible. So, while I'm trying not to be overly confident in this relationship, I'm also super excited to see where it goes. In conclusion, thanks in large part to the advice I received 3 months ago in the subreddit, I've emerged from a very dark place and am now cautiously optimistic about my future for the first time in a long time. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Parents made me pay rent and then kicked me out so that my golden child brother could move in, so I cut contact. But now they want my inheritance money, which my grandparents left for me. Hi, I'm an 18-year-old female seeking advice on an incident that happened between me and my family, which consists of my mom, dad, and my older brother, who we'll call Brad. I'll begin with some background for a little context. So, I was the second child in a family of extremely high-achieving people. Both my parents are college professors. Brad is 6 years older than me and has always been my family's miracle child, because it was hard for my mom to get pregnant initially. He has always been this golden child, extremely good at whatever he puts his hands to. When I was born, the bar of expectations for me was set high because of Brad. I am extremely kind and generous, and I involve myself in a lot of social activities. I am not a top scorer or an exceptional athlete, but one thing I know about myself is that I am a good artist. Art has always intrigued me, and that's what I've pursued since a very young age. It was hard for my family to understand that having different interests didn't make me less capable. So according to them, I've been the failure child. The bias since my childhood has been so blatant that even my extended family could sense that I was treated differently. One Christmas when I was 5, while opening the gifts, I obviously went ahead and picked up the bigger box. Even with the repeated insistence of my mother, I didn't leave it, so my dad decided to snatch the box from me in front of everyone. I began to cry, and they tried to shush me with a smaller gift, then handed the bigger box to Brad. He got a telescope, whereas I was given a dress, which I had like 100 of at that point. The next day, my grandparents sent me a dollhouse, realizing what had gone down, and from that day on, they've been the only people to support me. My brother had just passed high school when I turned 13. He got into a good college, and my parents also decided to move us all to a better house in a suburban and extremely posh location. I wasn't very excited about the move because that meant my grandparents would be even farther away. Anyway, I had no say in it, so I went along. My parents had saved a good amount of their income for Brad's education, and the new house was taken on a loan. Brad and I didn't have a sour relationship or a relationship at all, but I still decided to gift him a watch with my saved pocket money as a congratulatory gift. He saw the watch and smiled, only for my dad to intervene and take it away because he had gifted Brad a branded one. Brad didn't say anything, but it broke my heart, so from that day on, I decided to mind my own business. Every night at dinner was a horror. All my parents could talk about was how great Brad was doing at college. The constant comparison got on my nerves, and I cried about it to my grandparents almost every night. I had previously tried to stay with them instead of my parents, but my parents didn't unite, suspecting I would be spoiled if they let me stay with my grandparents. Now, it is legal in my state for people to work from the age of 14, so on my birthday that year, instead of making the day special for me, my parents decided to give me a valuable life lesson and suggested that I start working part-time to earn my own expenses, since they were tight on money because of the new house. They had ample money to send to Brad for his expenses, but were suddenly short as soon as I reached the legal age to earn. I felt lonely but didn't say anything because I knew there was no point. We moved to the new house in a few months. I had started working at a bookstore and was able to earn better than what most people got for the job due to the extra hours I put in. I had told my grandparents about it, and they were happy knowing I was financially free now but also wished I could move out soon for a better future. Brad, on the other hand, had been causing some trouble. He had gotten into a relationship and was missing classes and stuff, which led to my parents being frustrated at home. Within that week, my parents decided to have a talk with me. They told me that finances had been tough since they bought this house and had to pay for Brad as well, and they knew I was earning well enough for a part-time job, so they suggested I start contributing to the house with my money in the form of rent. Their explanation was that they were teaching me the ways of the world without necessarily putting the burden on me. I didn't say anything and went to my room. They got a call from my grandparents who scolded them for treating me this way after I told them about it. They had a long fight, and after 2 to 3 hours, both my parents came to my room and asked me to either pay the rent from the next month or find another place to live. My first response was that I was going to stay with my grandparents, but it was too far from my school, and because they were quite old, I decided not to be a burden on them, irrespective of them insisting that I come to their house, and I started giving my parents rent. I would have helped them with the finances if they had asked nicely, but their holier-than-thou attitude was what led to our relationship turning sour. I was just waiting for school to be over so I could move out of their house because after this, I didn't feel any connection to my own family. The next 2 years were quiet for me. I used to mind my own business and stopped having dinner with my parents. I was doing okay at school, and with my final year of high school approaching, I could see myself getting into a reputed art school. My parents weren't concerned as long as they were getting their monthly rent, and they were actually preoccupied with Brad. Brad had just graduated from college and was unwilling to come home to be with his girlfriend. His life had completely derailed after getting into a relationship, with his grades going down by the end of his degree, due to which he couldn't get a good enough job. My parents were pressuring him to come back home, but he went off the grid for 2 days and they freaked out. At him bailing on them when they got a call back, they were informed by him that he had married his girlfriend in Vegas. The next few weeks were tough because there were constant arguments at our home regarding this. Brad was trying to convince them to meet his wife once before passing judgment on her, and my parents were just constantly ranting about how he was bringing shame to our name. I couldn't have been less bothered, just that I started to hang out at my friends' houses more. No one other than my grandparents knew about this, so my parents eventually met Brad and his wife but weren't welcoming. They bitched about the girl after she and Brad left, and I honestly found them pathetic for this, but I wasn't going to involve myself because my last high school year had begun, and there was no way I was going to risk it for their petty fights. I had started to live at my grandparents' house for weeks at a time because of my toxic household, and because I had turned 18, things changed. Right before my finals, things started to go bad between Brad and his wife because of our parents' interference, and they eventually concluded that divorce was the only option. My parents couldn't have been happier and blamed everything that was wrong with Brad on his now ex-wife. I was asked to pay for my parents' trip to Brad's city to bring him back home, which I clearly said no to. They weren't pleased but arranged funds from somewhere else to get Brad back. A detail I didn't mention was that this new house we had moved to only had 2 bedrooms, so when Brad was brought back, my parents asked me to shift to the hall for the time being since I was about to leave for college in a few months. They clearly didn't care about me or my education and how this shift could affect me, but wished for their golden child to have access to everything to start fresh. Because I was paying rent to them, I told them that this arrangement wasn't acceptable to me so close to my finals. They suggested that if this wasn't good enough for me, then I could go stay at my grandparents' house like I've been doing for the past few months, just that I would still have to pay the rent because most of my stuff would still be at the house. I expected Brad to say something, but he didn't bat an eye at our parents treating me like this. I couldn't believe how cruel my own family was being to me, but I decided to stay strong. I went straight to my room, packed all the stuff I needed, and called a cab to leave their house. While leaving, I asked them to do whatever they wanted with the stuff I left because I wasn't going to pay a single penny to help their poor selves and fund their child who couldn't do anything in his life. I had already called an Uber, so I stormed out. I called my grandparents on the way and explained everything to them and how I was coming to their house. They welcomed me with open arms and provided me with a safe space. They had gotten calls from my dad asking if I was there, so that they could come there to ridicule me after I humiliated them, but my grandparents lied about me not being there and asked my parents not to bother them. The next morning I saw I had gotten a few calls from them, but over the week, the number of calls started to decrease, meaning they didn't really care if I was doing okay. So, in reciprocation, I went no contact with them. I studied hard for my finals and passed with good grades. I had also applied to colleges and was awaiting the results. One day when I came back home to my grandparents' house, I was surprised to find my parents sitting there waiting for me. As soon as they saw me, my mom started to cry, and my dad, in an angry yet sad voice, began to berate me and called me the worst daughter ever because I abandoned them in their time of need and didn't help them financially when I could have. They were actually at my grandparents' house to ask them for some money because after I stopped paying rent, they were facing difficulties in paying their mortgage. They're now trying to make me feel like an a-hole by saying that family is everything and I abandoned them. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on the original post and understood my situation in that household. Agreeing with y'all, I do believe that my family has been cruel to me and my decision to leave them was right. I'll continue from where I left off. So, my parents had come to my grandparents' house pleading for money to pay their mortgage. My grandparents were willing to listen to them but decided against it after they saw my parents blaming me for everything. Once my father called me the worst daughter ever. My grandpa lost it and gave it back to him. In his own words, he told my father that he had been a terrible parent to me since my childhood because he expected too much of me. Grandpa kept going and let him know how everyone in our extended family pitied me because of how I was treated as a child. My parents tried to argue back but were shut down quickly when they were reminded of how they kicked me out to have their good-for-nothing son, Brad, back. Somehow, he wasn't a liability to them, but I was. My grandfather then broke the news to those two. He told them that he has over the years seen me grow into this wonderful person, and so has decided to give me my parents' share of the property in his will. My parents' jaws were touching the floor at this point. Realizing that they didn't have any other option, they began to shed crocodile tears and tried to convince my grandma to give them back their share. She reminded them that karma hit them in the face for what they did to me and that she had no regrets. My parents then began to beg me to convince my grandparents. They didn't once apologize for their nasty comments, but expected me to treat them nicely because they were family. Because I have been a fairly docile person all my life, they expected me to be kind to them, but on seeing how hard my grandparents were trying to fight for me, I grew a spine and let them know that there was no way they deserved a kid like me and that maybe they could expect funds from their golden child whose life they chose to destroy. They got extremely quiet all of a sudden and then began screaming at me, calling me names and wishing I was never born. My grandparents were done with them and asked them to leave before the cops were called. My parents left, all flustered. I began to cry and profusely thank my grandparents for being my actual parents and that I didn't wish for their money after all they had done for me. They consulted me and let me know that they had made up their mind long ago when they saw how selfish my parents were. They had also saved some money for Brad because he was their grandchild after all, but there was no way any of it could be accessed by my parents. They asked me not to care much about it all and to focus on my future, which I did. As I mentioned before, I had applied to a few colleges and fortunately got accepted into the best one. I decided to apply for a student loan, but after deliberating with my grandparents, I realized they were extremely wealthy and insisted on paying my tuition, to which, after a little hesitation, I agreed. I was going to leave in a month when the session began. About my parents and Brad, I hadn't heard about them so far and was happy things were working out this way because it was the first time I was feeling fully confident in myself. I was glad I had chosen to cut contact with them because no matter who it is, toxic people do make your lives miserable. Update 2. I thought the drama was over, but I was way off on that assumption. Since the last update, which was a week ago, I hadn't really heard from my family until one day I received an email from Brad. He mentioned in the email that he didn't have my number and wished to meet me once to talk. At first, I was a bit hesitant because honestly, we never really had a relationship, but then I brushed aside my worries and reminded myself that I had my grandparents with me. I replied affirmatively to the email, and we decided to meet for lunch at a local cafe. I had reached the location for Brad and was contemplating my decision to meet him. I chickened out and was about to leave when he showed up. He was looking pretty tired and had grown a stubble. Clearly looked like he wasn't doing okay. The first few minutes were a bit awkward, but I decided to initiate the conversation. Then he began talking, and boy, did I get some tea. So he told me that the house was a mess since my parents found out we weren't getting anything from our grandparents. For the first few days, the blame was on me, and then it shifted to them fighting each other. Brad, who had already been going through a tough divorce, couldn't handle it all and had left the house and had been staying at a friend's. The day before, he visited home and saw the state of the house. It looked like a bachelor's pad that hadn't been cleaned in months. Both the parents weren't at their jobs but sitting inside the home engaging in day drinking. Brad went ahead and cleaned the house, to which our parents replied that there wasn't a need for it because the house would be taken away in a few days as they couldn't afford it anymore. I felt extremely awkward hearing all this and didn't know how to respond because I had been in situations worse than this because of my parents and sometimes Brad, and there was no one other than my grandparents to console me. But I didn't wish to sound unsympathetic, so I nodded. Brad thought that I was sympathizing with him and kept talking, leading to him discussing his personal life. He told me that he had gone to meet his ex-wife secretly a few months back and they ended up in the same hotel room. He said he had gotten a call from her yesterday informing him that she was pregnant and wanted to keep the child while rekindling their relationship. Now he revealed the actual reason why he wished to meet me. He told me that since I had gotten money from our grandparents recently, maybe I could give a tiny share of it to our parents and some of it to him so that my parents would finally be able to get their lives together and he could begin fresh with his upcoming parenthood. He reasoned that this was going to be a favor he'd return as soon as he could, and maybe I could do this for my brother in the spirit of our relationship. Sitting there, I couldn't believe his audacity. I thought all this while that he needed an ear, but he was actually there for money. I lost it at that point and decided to be petty. I reminded him that no one was there for me my whole life, and I remember him standing quietly when our parents were kicking me out. So he better not disgrace the word family with his filthy mouth and ask shamelessly for money from me. I also told him that it was our parents who were the reason for their divorce because they deliberately interfered by filling his ears, the parents he was asking money for. Before he could say anything, I left money for my portion of the order and walked out. I went back to my grandparents' house and told them everything. They said they thought Brad was different, but as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Although my grandparents are still concerned about his ex-wife and his child, I think the fault was mine this time because I chose to respond to Brad and meet him, but there was no way I was going to entertain them any further. Update 3. This update is a week from the last one. I'll be moving to my college within the next 2 weeks. So, the last time I talked about how I reminded Brad of his place when he tried to ask for money from me. Everything I'm stating now is what I heard from my grandparents, who heard it from my aunt, who heard it directly from the source. Brad. After I told Brad about our parents' involvement in him getting the divorce, he went home angry and confronted our parents. They tried to calm him down and convince him that whatever they did was for his good. But he digressed and decided to leave them for good. They tried calling my grandparents to intervene and stop Brad from leaving, but they told our parents about the ex-wife's pregnancy and how there was no way Brad could be stopped now. My parents also had to vacate their house because they were unable to afford the high mortgage and they had now moved to a very low-profile area. As far as I know, Brad had left to stay at his ex-wife's house, at least until he gets himself together, and after that, they might think about getting back together. Now what I'm going to narrate has happened pretty recently, and I'm still quite upset about it. So, after Brad left, my parents somehow realized or assumed that it was me who told Brad everything and was the reason they were in such a fix in the first place. They decided to warn everyone against me and wrote a pretty delusional post calling me not only an illegitimate child but also a burden. They thought their posting such filth would garner them some sympathy, but people who had seen my childhood read that post and wrote some nasty comments about my parents, saying how undeserving they were of a child like me. A few who didn't know anything rang me up and chose some choice words to remind me how ungrateful I was as a child, and I replied to them saying if they don't know me, their opinion doesn't mean 2 cents to me. It offended most of them, but honestly, I didn't care enough. The only thing I was quite sad about was my parents thinking so lowly of me. I had always tried to be what they wanted me to become, only for them to blame everything wrong in their lives on me. I cried to my grandparents about it, who said they would make sure I wouldn't have to tolerate my parents once I left the city to study. Now, since my parents' plan to defame me to their advantage had failed, they tried to use the legal route to get back the inheritance they had lost. The lawyer was a family lawyer and had a great relationship with my grandparents. He gave my parents a reality check and asked them to stop humoring themselves, leaving them embarrassed. Then he told my grandpa about it, who narrated the incident to us as a funny story. I don't think my parents' shenanigans are gonna stop, but I hope things don't get any worse for me, at least until I leave. After I leave, I will officially be done with them, and none of it would be my business, which, to be honest, is a pretty exciting prospect at this point. Update 4. So, I am writing this update after a month. I am now living in the dorm of my college and having an excellent time adjusting to this new life away from the toxicity. I have still been in constant touch with my grandparents, which is why I'm able to write this update. Before I begin, I'd like to answer a question that was being asked a lot. A lot of the comments mentioned that my parents are professors and wondered how it was possible for them to run out of money to pay the mortgage. I think people have underestimated how bad their financial planning was. The new house we moved to was extremely costly, way beyond what our parents earned. They thought they'd be able to pay through their savings but were way off in their calculations, and that's why they were facing such a financial crisis now. Now, about the situation with my parents, they have been bad-mouthing me to anyone and everyone, but most people have not been taking them seriously after their post. Brad, on the other hand, lived with his ex-wife for like 2 weeks and came back to our hometown in hopes of better opportunities. He had taken some money from his ex-wife and was searching for places to live because he didn't wish to go back home to my parents. My grandparents offered him their place to stay until he found a job, and he accepted. When they asked him about his future plans, he told them that he still plans to get back with his ex-wife for the sake of their family. Our parents tried to get in touch with him, but he outright asked them to get their act together before they tried to be a part of his life. My grandparents mentioned to me that they wished to help Brad out because they could feel his desire to change and were going to offer him some money once he got a job. I didn't give any opinions but trusted my grandparents for their best judgment. A few days later, I came back to my grandparents' house to collect some stuff I didn't take in the first go. I also gifted them a painting I made, which they forcefully paid me for as a token for my first sale as an artist. I thanked them and got a bit emotional remembering how my parents used to ask for money for me when I was just a child. My grandfather, on hearing this, mentioned how he found my parents taking rent for me absurd in the first place because they didn't have any expenses other than groceries. I asked him what he was talking about and he told me that he had set up a fund for my and Brad's education since middle school and that was what paid for most of our school and Brad's college expenses, with my parents having full control over it. This came as a huge surprise to me because I was told since my childhood that I should start paying up ASAP to reduce the burden on my parents and handle my own expenses. I told my grandfather that I had no idea of this, and he took it into his hands to confront my parents. Brad was still living there and had come back after his day of job searching around the town. My grandma invited my parents, and what unfolded was something we didn't expect. When my parents showed up, Grandpa sat them down and asked them about the fund for my and Brad's education in our presence. They tried to cover by saying how it was used as intended, but on being asked further about why I had to contribute, they broke down. They admitted to using all that money for their own enjoyment and activities, never once thinking about how that would affect us. I couldn't believe how my own parents could be this selfish. After listening to everything they had to say, I made it very clear that I wanted nothing to do with them. Even if I ever, which is not a huge possibility at this moment, decide to have a relationship with them in the future, it will be on my terms. The next day, as I was packing to go back to college, Brad came to my room and apologized to me for everything and for not being there as a big brother. He said I was still family to him and he would love it if his child could get to have time with her aunt. I decided to forgive him and slowly build our non-existent relationship. My grandparents were happy that we were trying to patch things up, and honestly, if my grandparents weren't there for me, I don't know where I would have been by now, so I decided to dedicate my first professional painting collection to them. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Caught wife cheating on a dating app while acting and always on her phone. So I tricked her BF into coming to Christmas dinner and exposed their affair to our whole family. My wife and I were married for 2 years before I discovered she had been fooling me. First, I'll admit that I loved my wife so much, and even when I noticed signs that she was acting edgy or dressing extra, I didn't consider most of it. My wife and I first met at a mutual friend's housewarming party and clicked instantly. We had a couple of conversations, talked about regular things, what she loved and what I loved, and she was very free-spirited. She laughed at almost every joke, which I found beautiful and attractive. I also loved that she was not acting like she was out of my league, like the rest of her friends did, and after we had a great time together, we went our separate ways. But before we did, we exchanged contacts and I called her as soon as I got home that evening. We didn't talk much that first night because she went to a different location to hang out with her friends, but the next day we talked and flowed like old-time friends. I won't lie, I wasn't single when I met my wife. My relationship was complicated and I was going through so much with my then-girlfriend. I was tired of her lies, her deception, and always playing the victim in situations she made, which was exhausting for me. So when my then-girlfriend asked that we break up, I didn't argue with her. I did this because I was already close friends with my wife, and she looked like the kind of woman that would give me the long-lasting peace I wanted. And I was right. My wife gave me the kind of peace, love, and respect I wanted, but it was short-lived. After I officially broke up, my wife was there to comfort me and spend time with me whenever she wanted to. She was a freelance graphic designer, and this gave her the flexibility to work from anywhere. I'd even invite her for the weekend and she would work from my place, and whenever she was taking a break, we'd go out and have fun. As of that time, she was single and was looking to have fun. Aside from her two friends I met at the housewarming party, she didn't have other friends and didn't have much of a social life. So we became best friends, and in no time, we were madly in love with each other. Even without officially asking her out, we were almost inseparable and went everywhere together all the time. You all might call it obsession, but it wasn't. I had been yearning for a woman I could connect with and not feel insecure, and I found that in my wife. We introduced each other to our parents, and my parents loved her. She was my maternal grandmother's namesake, creating a beautiful bond between her and my mother. I had a great job and the pay was great, but as a freelancer, she earned more than me and I was cool with that. Despite her earning more than I did, I still took care of her. We dated for 2 years. Those were the most memorable moments we had together. We traveled to different countries, mainly for sightseeing, and took 2 proper vacations within those 2 years. While we dated, my love for her and my gifting increased. On our first anniversary, I felt we were ready to take things to the next level, so I asked her to move in with me, and she was glad to. Her parents even suggested that she move in with me at the early stage of our relationship so we could get to know each other. But she refused and said she didn't want to rush things. I literally did not hold back anything from my wife. Nothing at all. I loved her wholeheartedly and did everything to make her happy. Her happiness was my priority, and I adored everything about her. I believed we were on our way to the happily ever after life, but I was very mistaken. After 2 years of dating and 1 year of living together, I popped the question and she said yes. We had a small wedding, invited our friends and family, and had a great time. We didn't need to move into a bigger apartment, so we stayed at my old house. We didn't do 50-50 responsibility, but she contributed to it. I took care of rent, gas, and utility bills, and she took care of groceries. Remember that I mentioned at the beginning of my story that there was a time I noticed some things were off with my wife, but I didn't pay much attention to it? Well, that started after a year in our marriage. She just changed, and I could not explain why. On some days she would be happy and all nice. The next day, she would be so cold and ignore me like we didn't live in the same house. Then she started going out more and more. From being someone who didn't have friends and a solid social life, I would often return from work and she would leave a note that said she was out to see her friends or hang out with other freelancers that lived in our city. The truth is, I was happy that she was even socializing more, and I didn't really ask detailed questions whenever she returned from her meetings. As time passed, I noticed she started caring more about her looks, applying makeup, and wearing skin-tight, skimpy clothes. I was a bit concerned about the skimpy clothes she wore, and each time I talked about it, she would say I was being insecure, and I didn't like that she was exploring different options. I didn't like it when she said that, so I stopped mentioning it and allowed her to do her thing. She even started staying late whenever she went out in the evenings, and I felt she needed to unwind after sitting in front of her laptop for hours. Our bond as husband and wife also became weaker as all of this continued, and most times she wouldn't let me touch her because she claimed she was always tired, and I tried to be an understanding husband, not knowing that my wife was cheating on me. It was until one day we were both sitting in the living room and she mentioned something about having insufficient space on her phone, and I advised her to clear/clean her phone. As she was doing that, in a short glance at her screen, I noticed she recently deleted a dating app, and I was curious. I tried to hold myself together and pretended I did not see everything. Later that evening, after giving her a hot dose of my husband's duties, she slept off and I used her fingerprint to unlock her phone as she slept. I re-downloaded the app, and because her details were registered with Google, I got signed in immediately. I didn't even dig deep when I found out that my wife had been dating one not-so-fine guy for almost a year, and he had seen me a couple of times. I read all of their romantic conversations, and I was heartbroken to see that they mocked me whenever they talked and said many nasty things about me. I was so enraged and even thought of giving my wife a peaceful sleep, but I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in jail, so I pretended to chat with him like it was my wife and invited her boyfriend to join us for Christmas dinner in a few days so he could meet my family. Still pretending to be my wife, I told him I would travel so we would have the whole evening to ourselves. After he agreed, I deleted the app, charged my wife's phone, and pretended all was well. In fact, I acted happier than I was the previous days, and she believed I was excited about Christmas. Long story short, on Christmas Eve, he arrived at my in-laws' home and it was my turn to make a fool out of them. I knew the exact time he would come and open the door for him. The shock on his face was worth framing, and I pretended I didn't know him. When my wife saw him, she dropped the tray of food she was holding and her parents suspected something was wrong. Her parents didn't know him either, but he was invited to the table to eat with us. As I ate, I began talking about a friend who recently found out his wife was cheating on him on a dating app and he was mad and divorced her. I made the story so emotional. Her parents even said the lady did not deserve a second chance and her husband did the right thing by divorcing her. While I told the story, it was evident that my wife was finding it difficult to chew and swallow the food in her mouth and she was sweating profusely. Her boyfriend kept touching the collar of his shirt and it was evident that he was uncomfortable too. After beating around the bush, I told her parents that their daughter was cheating on me with the man she invited for dinner, and her parents questioned her, and they were so furious when they confirmed it. They embarrassed her boyfriend without wasting time and kicked him out of their house. Then they rained abuse on my wife and they expressed their disappointment. I'm glad she will have to live with her parents' disappointment for the rest of her life and she has no place in my life anymore. She tried to defend herself and said she did it because I was getting boring and I did everything she wanted without complaints. Hearing this made her parents more furious and they asked her to find somewhere else to sleep that day. I was so shattered that she could repay me that way and I left their house. Later on, we divorced and I have not seen her since. It's funny how you pour your heart out for a woman, care for her, and love her unconditionally. In the end, she takes advantage of that. Right now, I'm not ready for a relationship and it might take a while to heal. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Tried to help my alcoholic wife after she lost her whole family. Instead, she cheated on me with her rehab coach and wanted to leave me, so I decided to take revenge. I was married to my wife for 4 years, but due to her alcohol problem, our marriage was rocky. Before my wife and I were married, I knew she had a thing for alcohol, but I didn't think it would become a problem in the future. She was the type of woman who loved to drink and party. The first time we met each other was at a club. The moment I saw her, I liked her instantly, and I approached her and her group of friends. She and her friends had come to the club to celebrate a birthday that night, and that was how we talked and spent the rest of the evening at the club together. After meeting each other for the first time that night, we went home together because she asked if she could come home with me, and on the first night we got intimate. My wife said she thought I was one of those men who wanted to tap her honeypot, and that would be the end, but for me it was different. I liked her so much, and getting intimate with her intensified my feelings for her. In the following weeks, we met at least twice a week, and after 3 months of spending time together, we started dating. By this time, she was fresh out of college and did one of those small, hourly pay jobs until she could get the kind of job she wanted. As I mentioned earlier, I knew my wife had a drinking problem from the first few weeks we met, but I didn't think it would get to the point of seeking help from rehab. After a year and some months of dating, my wife and I married and officially moved in together. Unfortunately, a year after we got married, she lost her parents and only sibling in a ghastly motor accident, and this was when things got worse. Losing her parents and only sibling in one day took its mental toll on her, and she resorted to drinking to help her deal with the pain. When her drinking got extreme, I thought it would only be for the mourning period, but it wasn't. After the burial, months passed and my wife did not get over her family's demise. She became a shadow of herself, and I tried to comfort her. I understood that she was in a very dark place mentally, but I tried my best to support her in every area she needed support. Unfortunately, around that same time, she got pregnant but miscarried the baby, which added to her agony. She also stopped working and caring for us fell on me. On the days she wasn't drinking, she would be aggressive and get mad over things that didn't require such anger. I once walked in on her making out with one of my neighbors, and I was furious. She was high on alcohol and he seemed sober. I kicked the neighbor out of my house and reported him to his wife, but I couldn't do anything to my wife because I believed she wasn't in her right senses. Well, I was wrong because a couple of days later I saw her talking to the same neighbor, and when she saw me coming, she walked away from him immediately. Meanwhile, by this time her drinking got worse. If I gave her money, she would spend all of it on alcohol, and it got to the point where she couldn't go a day without drinking. I got so frustrated and I was tired, too. I was tired of tolerating her, paying the bills alone, and still caring for her. It was already choking me, and I decided to get her help when I had no other option. I told her I was taking her to rehab, but she was hesitant to go until after a series of persuasion. For the first 3 months she went to rehab, I noticed a significant improvement, and I was glad I was getting my wife back. As the concerned husband I was finally at peace that she had broken out of her bad habit and was finally getting her life together. But I was wrong. One day, I was at home enjoying some YouTube content on my phone when my wife came home to tell me that she was getting married to the love of her life. When she said this, I didn't pay much attention to her and I just laughed it off. But when she mentioned her rehab coach's name, my ears raised and I asked her to repeat what she said. According to my wife, her rehab coach, Ryan, was the one for her, and she told me they were in love with each other. She also said that she loved Ryan because he treated her like a queen, talked to her nicely and blah blah, and they would get married. I was shocked when I heard that and knew she was going nuts. The Ryan she was talking about was already a married man with 2 kids, so it didn't make any sense. I was also sure she did not come up with the whole marriage thing on her own, so I was forced to confront Ryan on her next meeting day. When I told him everything my wife had said and how they were planning to get married, Ryan said she was delusional. Somehow my wife heard all of his responses. She had been eavesdropping on our conversation, and the moment she heard him, she came out of her hiding place with her eyes filled with tears. She literally sobbed like a baby, and at the same time, she showed me a video of her and Ryan together in bed and in the bathroom naked. She had Ryan record the video of the last time they were together in a hotel, and he sent it to her. She even said Ryan promised to divorce his wife so they could get married. When she showed me the video, Ryan was so pissed and he called her names for being dumb enough to believe that he would leave his wife to be with an unstable woman like her. And his words broke her heart. After losing her family, I had never seen my wife cry like that, and at that point, I understood that she loved Ryan as she claimed. She even planned to divorce me so she could be with Ryan, which was heartbreaking for me. I was so mad at Ryan for taking advantage of his client, my wife, and to give him a taste of his medicine, I pressed charges using the video my wife showed me as evidence in court. Sharing this here is easy because the hurt and heartbreak I felt almost shattered me. Despite all the tough times my wife had given me, I still loved her and I tried to get her help so that things could go back to normal. But she cheated on me in return and even planned to divorce me to be with her rehab coach. Anyways, I still felt pity for her because she was utterly heartbroken after she found out Ryan was using her, and she nearly fell into depression. Out of pity, I had to submit her to a mental hospital for more watchful care, and after she was admitted, I divorced her. Even though it seemed like she was not in her right state of mind, she was in the right state of mind to think of divorcing me. Honestly, our relationship was a serious waste of my time, resources, and emotions, but I'll consider it as one of the lessons of life. I'll give a piece of free advice. Some women are not worth all the sacrifices most men make. Even if you give them the universe, they will still have an excuse to cheat. As for Ryan, I won the court case and he got a jail term for taking advantage of his mentally unstable client, and the government shut his business down. I often miss my wife, but I cannot use her problem as an excuse for her to break our marital vows and cheat on me. Now on to the next story. Story 13. Fiancé yelled at me on my graduation day, canceled our wedding a week before over a small fight, and told guests the wedding was called off. Now he's begging me to get back together. So my ex-fiancé, M30, has canceled our F30 wedding a week before it taking place. We've been together for about 6 years and lived together. For context, what happened basically was an argument that escalated. We were heading to my program graduation. It's a smaller event of about 10 students and some professors from a community college. On that morning, as we were getting ready, I asked if he would be okay to wear one of his button-ups instead of the shirt he had on so we can get a nice photo. He was annoyed and snapped, saying, "Why do I have to do things for others?" And I told him that he truly doesn't have to. I was just asking, but it's ultimately his choice. He ended up putting the button up, and we arrived at the ceremony. Everything went fine, and he was very happy for me. However, on the way home in the car, traffic was filling up and he was annoyed. I offered an alternative route that I know cut some time, and the exit to that route was coming up. He didn't take it and I was slightly annoyed about it because he was cranky with me about traffic, so I asked why he didn't take it. He started full-on yelling that my tone is rude and that he doesn't have to drive the way I tell him to. I replied saying that I literally just asked and I don't actually care what route he takes, he was the one having a problem with traffic. He blew up and blamed me for getting him upset. When we got home, I apologized and explained that I didn't mean to come across as mean. I also said that screaming doesn't help in any situation and that we should talk instead. He basically explained that an apology doesn't solve anything and that he needs such things to not happen. Otherwise he would continue exploding at me because that's the only time I listened to him. After a few hours, we spoke again. He apologized for yelling, and I apologized for the miscommunication that happened. Despite resolving this, later that night I was crying due to the fact that he so easily yells at me when he's upset. I was so upset that even on such an important day for me, I felt like he picked fights, and to add to this, yelling is such a red flag for me, and I never do that to him or anyone for that matter. The next morning we were having breakfast and he asked why I seemed gloomy. So I told him that everything's okay. I'm just processing what happened yesterday. He asked me to please share with him, so I told him that I felt like my special day was kind of ruined by fighting about things we could have easily resolved. He immediately just flipped and started getting angry again. He blamed me for the fights, and when I replied that I don't think it's fair to blame me, he got angrier and said that he can't do this, that I'm not a good communicator, and that he cannot get married like this. I was full-on shocked. I thought he was talking out of emotion like many times before, but this time he actually ended up sending a mass text to some guests to let them know that the wedding is called off. I was flabbergasted at the quickness and so confused. We started arguing and then had to leave for our days. Later that day when we returned, I asked if this is truly something he wants, to call everything off, and he responded with a confident yes. What I thought was an action out of anger seemed to be solid for him for the rest of the night and the next day. I tried to fix things between us. After many hours of talking and lots of crying for my end, he kept explaining that I don't communicate well and that this cancellation is my fault. I tried to offer some solutions, but he was full on with the decision to cancel and break up. I asked if we could give it another day or two to ensure this is what we want before we cancel the venue. He declined and asked to cancel the venue and vendors immediately, so we did. The next day, I went on errands and then met with my friend. It was truly such a hard day, and I was heartbroken, still digesting this is happening. When I came home, he asked to talk and started crying that he regrets everything he said in the last days, that he didn't mean it, he was angry and didn't think straight. He said he will start therapy and wanted to do couples counseling now too, after I offered it many times. Anyway, he apologized profusely and kept asking if we can mend everything or whether he effed up. I was almost sure this regret would come in. Honestly, maybe it was mean, but I said, yeah, you effed up big time. You made a rash decision that hurt our relationship big time. There's no going back from here. He pretty much begged for another chance, but everything is canceled, and my trust is shattered. The wedding is supposed to be in 2 days. His aunt was supposed to be on the way to our house to help us pack decorations. And now there's no way we can schedule everything again. And frankly, I don't want to at this point. This is not the first he cancels plans or breaks up with me during a disagreement. Everyone is telling us that this is fixable, that clearly we love each other, so if we want, this situation doesn't have to be the end of the relationship, but I don't understand how. So much time, effort, and money has gone into this wedding that's now done. And plus, more importantly, I can't trust him anymore. I don't know what to do at this point. We were supposed to go on honeymoon right after, so now I'm thinking on going by myself. He asked if we can go together and spend the time to fix things, but I'm just questioning everything. I think I prefer going myself to do some soul-searching. Should I call this quits and move on with my life or take his word and start couples counseling? I love him with my entire heart, and we had many loving experiences between us over the years. We don't have any issues aside from such incidents, but I don't know whether it's actually possible to come back from this one. Thoughts? Advice? Now for some comments. Comment 1. Like, he yells at the drop of a hat. If he's annoyed by traffic, it's her fault. If she suggests a route home, he gets angry. He asks her why she's gloomy, and as soon as she answers, his immediate reaction like a toddler is to just crack it. And then he has the stones to say she isn't communicating? There's gaslighting, and then there's actually setting your partner on fire like this. Comment 2. Go on that honeymoon without him or send him on it and use the time to pack your stuff and move out. This is not a person worth fighting for. You've just been given a get-out-of-jail-free card. Take it and run. Comment 3. He breaks up with you when you fight. That's not stable or healthy. I would recommend moving on from the relationship and finding one with someone who won't hold a relationship hostage every time you have an issue. You'll be amazed once you move on how much better a healthy relationship will be for you. Update. Thanks to everyone for the comments and support. Since all this happened, he apologized profusely and offered to return the venue and still go and get married on the same day. He also offered couples counseling starting now and right after we get married if I still want to. Additionally, he offered to go on the trip together to fix things. I declined to everything since the damage has been done, and I decided to go on the honeymoon myself while he packs all his items. He's going to start his own therapy journey while we're broken up. I don't know what's next, but this hurts so much because we still love each other. He's going to work on his mental health to address the impulsive actions when he's upset. He also realized it wasn't actually a communication issue but rather how he felt attacked due to his own confidence. I appreciate his honesty, but can't see how it's possible to forgive what happened. Torn between trying couples counseling since he seems genuine to completely separating. Comments. Comment 1. Move on. Count your blessings that you didn't get married to this person. As a hard rule, if a guy loses his temper for ridiculous reasons and keeps walking away, breaking up, or canceling a wedding by texting guests before you've even finished discussing it, that's not husband material. He saved you a world of heartache. Move on. Comment 2. Call it quits. He does things with the intention of hurting you or making you sad. I don't know where his resentment is coming from, but frankly, that's on him to figure out. He will deliberately hurt you in the future if you stay. He's not marriage material. He shouldn't be the father of your children because this behavior will escalate once kids are involved. Comment 3. A healthy relationship is trust, honesty, respect, and open communication as a start. You state, "I can't trust him anymore." Your words feel like a true statement. Love is not enough. You are correct that he needs help, and it is likely better to do it without the extra pressure of a relationship. A long break, say 6 months, to really show he is able to work on himself, set goals, etc. At least set yourself free of being screamed at. That is also a choice you can make. Now on to the next story. Story 14. Parents secretly took out a $30,000 loan in my name to buy a boat. When I found out, my mom threatened to call child services, but she got arrested and now the company is suing her. I knew my mom had her eye on a pontoon boat for the last year. She and my dad retired in 2022, and while they aren't swimming in money, they weren't hurting much for it either, or so I thought. They bought a boat in February for a little over $30,000. I didn't think a lot of it since they always rented a pontoon boat 2 to 3 times a year and didn't appear to have money issues. At the start of July, I began getting my ducks in a row to buy a house. When I applied for a pre-approval, I found out my credit score was barely over 600 and I had an extra $30,000 plus in debt I had no idea about. Even worse, it was 90 plus days late. I told the lender the account wasn't mine and he said my identity had probably been stolen, but it was probably someone close to me, as the money would have had to go to a bank account with my name on it. I shared a bank account with my ex-fiancée and asked the bank to look into it. They said the account had been closed a couple of years ago when we broke up and no attempts to send money to it/take money from it have been made since. I filed a dispute with the company and the credit agencies as it was obvious to me I had been hacked or my identity had been stolen. About a week ago, I got a notice from the company to my apartment. First I had ever heard from them, saying they were going to charge off the account if payment wasn't made. I requested more information from them and they linked me to their fraud department. They were able to tell me where the money was sent to, a bank account from when I was a minor that I shared with my mom. When I called that bank, they confirmed there was activity on the account and the statements showed the loan coming in and almost all of the money being transferred into what looks like my mom's account at the same bank. I haven't used the bank in more than a decade. I called my mom and asked her about it, and she, after a long pause, said, "That's how they bought the boat. They made one payment on the account and realized they probably couldn't afford the monthly payment for the next 5 years. When I asked why they hadn't told me, she said it was because they figured I would say no, they were right, and that they had worked hard in their lives and wanted to enjoy retirement. It ended by them saying the boat couldn't be repossessed because it was a personal loan. My mom suggested declaring bankruptcy, and I told them I was going to the police. My mom said not to do that because they wouldn't take it seriously. When I told her I was doing it anyway, she hinted that she might have to call DCFS on me. My 2-year-old burned themselves on a hot pan earlier this year. Simple ER visit and was told accidents happen. He's fine. Regarding an unsafe home. I think I'm still going to the police because declaring bankruptcy would make it impossible to buy a house. I just needed to vent and looking for any advice. Update 1. I filed my police report the same day as my first post. The officer and I talked for probably 20 minutes and I printed out a statement from the bank. I spoke with a detective a couple days later for another 20 minutes. Fast forward about 2.5 weeks and my dad called saying my mom had been arrested. He said an officer and a detective showed up at their house asking to speak with her. When she went onto the porch, they grabbed her and arrested her. The detective, same one I talked to, explained they had a warrant. My mom has never been in trouble with the law in her life and she got arrested on a felony. They tried talking to her and she immediately requested a lawyer. They stopped asking questions but didn't let her see a lawyer right away. My dad was furious, but the detective told him to have a lawyer go down to the county jail in the morning before she went to the judge. The next morning apparently she and the lawyer talked and she was released in the afternoon with a new court date. About a week later, I get a call from DCFS requesting to meet with me about my son. I had nothing to hide, so I agreed. We spoke for about half an hour at my apartment and I explained the situation. She seemed understanding and told me there are no obvious issues. She just had to follow up on a report. I will say if I'm ever in trouble, I'm hiring her lawyer. The case was dismissed at her next court date in late September. The detective called me the next day and explained the state attorney believed that they wouldn't be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt she intentionally stole my identity. He said he figured it was a BS reason because he had documents from the bank and loan company. He said the state attorney drops a lot of cases, even open and shut ones, especially when it's not violent and they have a hired attorney. She never made a statement other than her attorney telling the detective she didn't do it. He also said the loan company might go after my mom in a lawsuit. What brings me back here is that a couple weeks ago, the account dropped from my credit. Even better though, I got a letter from DCFS yesterday saying the allegation against me was unfounded. I'm never talking to my piece of trash mom again. Thank you everyone who gave me advice and hope in my first post. It just sucks that she is probably going to end up with a free boat out of it, unless the loan company sues her, which I hope they do. Update 2, February 10th, 2025. I'm happy to say nothing else has popped up on my credit in the last 3 months. What I'm really happy to say is that the credit card company itself is suing my mom for almost $40,000, according to my aunt. I no longer talk to my mom, but she messaged me on Facebook last week. She had the nerve to ask me to both ask the credit card company to drop the lawsuit and pay half of what they're asking for, with the understanding that I'll be paid back at some point. Both of these with a veiled threat she will call DCFS again if I don't. No and no. She's seeing the consequences of her actions. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.